Victoria Sterling's reflection stared back at her from the glass wall of her corner office. Perfect makeup, not a hair out of place, Armani suit pressed to razor sharpness. Behind her loomed the Dallas skyline, a testament to ambition and power. Before her lay the future of Sterling Dynamics. 15 years of sacrifice, distilled into a single meeting worth $50 million. The documents on her Italian marble desk represented more than a deal with Chen Corporation. They represented validation. From community college accounting classes to CEO by 40. From sharing a studio apartment with 3 roommates to owning the penthouse overlooking the city. From being dismissed as too ambitious to commanding a company of 3,000 employees across 12 countries. Victoria touched the sterling silver pendant at her throat. Her grandmother's the only inheritance she'd received besides grit and determination. The familiar ritual centered her. In 30 minutes, Mr. Chen and his delegation would arrive. The contract would expand Sterling Dynamics into the Asian market, potentially tripling their revenue within 2 years. Her intercom buzzed, shattering her moment of calm. Jennifer's voice carried an uncharacteristic tremor. Ms. Sterling, Marcus Thompson was in a car accident this morning. He's in surgery now. The world tilted sideways. Marcus, their senior interpreter for the Chen meeting. The only one in the company fluent enough in Mandarin to handle the technical complexities of the manufacturing contract. How bad? Victoria's voice remained steady even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Critical condition. He won't be available today. I've called every translation service in the city. And the single word carried the weight of 15 years of work. With the holiday weekend, no one has a Mandarin specialist available on short notice, especially not one familiar with manufacturing terminology. Victoria's gaze drifted to the factory floor visible through her office window 37 floors below. Tiny figures moved with purpose across the sprawling facility where Sterling Dynamics produced their precision manufacturing equipment. Sometimes the most important people are the ones nobody sees, her grandmother used to say. The maintenance workers, the assembly line technicians, the people whose hands built the company's reputation, while executives took the credit. The Chen delegation arrives in 20 minutes, Jennifer continued. Should I try to reschedule? Victoria knew what rescheduling meant. Chen had flown specifically from Shanghai for this meeting after 3 years of negotiations. Any delay would be interpreted as disrespect or worse, incompetence. No, keep calling services. Offer triple rates if necessary. I'll think of something. As Jennifer hurried away, Victoria pressed her palms against the cool marble of her desk. Failure wasn't an option. Not with 3,000 jobs in 15 years of sacrifice hanging in the balance. Deep in the maintenance workshop of Sterling Dynamics, Miguel Santos tightened the final bolt on the CNC machine that had been malfunctioning for 3 days. His scarred hands moved with practiced precision, each callous and healed burn, a testament to years of mechanical work. At 34, his face carried the weathered look of a man who'd seen both combat and civilian struggles, yet his eyes remained alert and observant. Try it now, Miguel called to Raj, the young apprentice, watching him work. The machine hummed to life, its rhythmic precision, returning after 3 days of expensive consultants failing to diagnose the problem. Miguel wiped his hands on a shop rag, satisfaction replacing the fatigue of a 14-hour shift. How'd you know it was the calibration sensor? Raj asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Miguel tapped his ear. The sound was wrong. When you work with machines long enough, they talk to you. He glanced at his watch. Almost 9 p.m. Sophia's babysitter would be expecting him home soon. The big shots from Boston couldn't figure it out, Raj said, admiration evident. They charged the company, 10 grand for 3 days of head scratching. Miguel shrugged. Book learning and hands-on experience are different animals. He didn't mention that he'd spent 2 years on aircraft carriers fixing far more complex systems under combat conditions. As a maintenance technician at Sterling, he'd learned to keep his head down and his past to himself. 8 years in the Navy had given him more than mechanical skills. Born to immigrant parents in Texas, Miguel had grown up speaking Spanish at home and English at school. The Navy had stationed him in ports across Asia and South America, where he'd picked up Mandarin and Portuguese, languages that proved useful for coordinating repairs with local contractors, but seemed irrelevant in his current position. His phone vibrated. A text from Mrs. Patel next door watching Sophia. All good, but she has science homework she needs help with. Miguel texted back his thanks and that he'd be home soon. Sophia. Everything he did was for her. After Isabella walked out when Sophia was barely 2, claiming motherhood had been a mistake, Miguel had received an honorable discharge to raise his daughter alone. The transition from respected Navy mechanic to civilian had been harder than expected. Without certifications that translated to civilian credentials, the only job he could find was maintenance work. But it paid the bills. Their apartment wasn't much, 2 bedrooms in a working-class neighborhood, but it was clean and safe. Every month, Miguel put aside whatever he could for Sophia's education, determined she would have opportunities he never did. The maintenance workshop phone rang. Miguel answered while packing his tools. Maintenance Santos speaking. Miguel, it's Frank from third shift. The ventilation system in conference room A is making that noise again. Executives are having some big meeting tomorrow morning and they're panicking about it. Miguel suppressed a sigh. Another late night. On my way. He called Mrs. Patel, apologizing for the delay and promising to bring her favorite kolaches for breakfast as thanks. Then he grabbed his toolbox and headed toward the executive floor, a world apart from the industrial environment where he spent most of his days. The elevator ride to the 37th floor always felt like traveling to a different planet. Chrome and glass replaced concrete and steel. The smell of industrial lubricant gave way to expensive perfume and furniture polish. Miguel was acutely aware of his worn work clothes and the grease under his fingernails as he stepped into the executive domain. Conference room A stood at the end of a long hallway lined with awards and photographs of sterling executives shaking hands with business leaders and politicians. Miguel had never been inside the room itself. Maintenance requests for the executive floor usually went to specialized contractors. But with the holiday weekend, he was the only option. The room was impressive. A massive mahogany table dominated the space surrounded by leather chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of nighttime Dallas. Miguel located the ventilation access panel and got to work listening carefully to identify the source of the noise. As he worked, voices approached. Tense, urgent voices. Miguel instinctively made himself smaller, less visible. Years of experience had taught him that executives rarely acknowledged maintenance staff unless something was wrong. Victoria, you need to postpone. A man's voice smooth and condescending. That's not an option, Richard. A woman responded, stress evident in her clipped tone. Chen and his team are already en route from their hotel. Without an interpreter, this meeting is doomed. You're risking the entire company on pride. It's not pride, it's respect. Chen has flown across the world specifically for this meeting. Postponing now would be an insult. Miguel kept working, careful to remain silent as the executives entered the conference room. Through the open access panel, he could see their reflections in the windows. A tall woman with dark hair pulled into a severe bun, and a man with silver-streaked hair in an expensive suit. What about the app translation services? The man suggested. The woman, Victoria, scoffed. For a $50 million manufacturing contract with technical specifications, be serious, Richard. Then you've already failed. Richard's voice turned cold. The board will have questions about your judgment. The ventilation problem was simple, a loose connection causing vibration. Miguel tightened it, eliminating the noise, but remained motionless as the conversation continued. I've built this company from nothing. Victoria's voice carried the weight of someone pushed to her limit. I've navigated worse crises than this. Not with the Chen contract on the line. This deal represents 30% of our projected growth for the next fiscal year. Miguel slowly closed the access panel, hoping to slip away unnoticed. But as he turned, his toolbox scraped against the wall. Both executives turned toward the sound. Victoria Sterling, as the CEO whose picture hung in the lobby, but who rarely visited the factory floor, stared at him with a mixture of surprise and irritation. Maintenance, Miguel explained, keeping his eyes lowered respectfully. The ventilation system is fixed now. Thank you, Victoria said automatically, already dismissing him from her attention. Jennifer, please show him out and then bring me the latest. They're here, Richard interrupted, looking at his phone. Chen's car just pulled up. The color drained from Victoria's face. Miguel recognized the look, the same expression he'd seen on sailors' faces when critical systems failed during operations. Pure professional panic beneath a mask of control. Miguel should have walked away. should have returned to the maintenance shop, clocked out, and gone home to help Sophia with her science homework. His position at Sterling was stable, if unremarkable. Becoming visible to executives rarely ended well for people at his level. But something stopped him. Perhaps the memory of his commanding officer who'd recognized Miguel's potential and encouraged him to use all his skills, not just the ones in his job description. Perhaps the thought of Sophia, who deserved a father she could be proud of. The maintenance workshop phone rang. Miguel answered while packing his tools. Maintenance Santos speaking. Miguel, it's Frank from third shift. The ventilation system in conference room A is making that noise again. Executives are having some big meeting tomorrow morning, and they're panicking about it. Miguel suppressed a sigh. Another late night. On my way. He called Mrs. Patel apologizing for the delay and promising to bring her favorite kolaches for breakfast as thanks. Then he grabbed his toolbox and headed toward the executive floor, a world apart from the industrial environment where he spent most of his days. The elevator ride to the 37th floor always felt like traveling to a different planet. Chrome and glass replaced concrete and steel. The smell of industrial lubricant gave way to expensive perfume and furniture polish. Miguel was acutely aware of his worn work clothes and the grease under his fingernails as he stepped into the executive domain. Conference room A stood at the end of a long hallway lined with awards and photographs of sterling executives shaking hands with business leaders and politicians. Miguel had never been inside the room itself. Maintenance requests for the executive floor usually went to specialized contractors. But with the holiday weekend, he was the only option. The room was impressive. A massive mahogany table dominated the space surrounded by leather chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of nighttime Dallas. Miguel located the ventilation access panel and got to work listening carefully to identify the source of the noise. As he worked, voices approached. Tense, urgent voices. Miguel instinctively made himself smaller, less visible. Years of experience had taught him that executives rarely acknowledge maintenance staff unless something was wrong. Victoria, you need to postpone. A man's voice, smooth and condescending. That's not an option, Richard. A woman responded, stress evident in her clipped tone. Chen and his team are already en route from their hotel. Without an interpreter, this meeting is doomed. You're risking the entire company on pride. It's not pride, it's respect. Chen has flown across the world specifically for this meeting. Postponing now would be an insult. Miguel kept working, careful to remain silent as the executives entered the conference room. Through the open access panel, he could see the reflections in the windows. A tall woman with dark hair pulled into a severe bun, and a man with silver-streaked hair and an expensive suit. What about the app translation services, the man suggested. The woman, Victoria, scoffed. For a $50 million manufacturing contract with technical specifications, be serious, Richard. Then you've already failed, Richard's voice turned cold. The board will have questions about your judgment. The ventilation problem was simple, a loose connection causing vibration. Miguel tightened it, eliminating the noise, but remained motionless as the conversation continued. I've built this company from nothing. Victoria's voice carried the weight of someone pushed to her limit. I've navigated worse crises than this. Not with the Chen contract on the line. This deal represents 30% of our projected growth for the next fiscal year. Miguel slowly closed the access panel, hoping to slip away unnoticed. But as he turned, his toolbox scraped against the wall. Both executives turned toward the sound. Victoria Sterling, the CEO whose picture hung in the lobby, but who rarely visited the factory floor, stared at him with a mixture of surprise and irritation. Maintenance, Miguel explained, keeping his eyes lowered respectfully. The ventilation system is fixed now. Thank you, Victoria said automatically, already dismissing him from her attention. Jennifer, please show him out and then bring me the latest. They're here, Richard interrupted, looking at his phone. Chen's car just pulled up. The color drained from Victoria's face. Miguel recognized the look, the same expression he'd seen on sailors' faces when critical systems failed during operations. Pure professional panic beneath a mask of control. Miguel should have walked away, should have returned to the maintenance shop, clocked out, and gone home to help Sophia with her science homework. His position at Sterling was stable, if unremarkable. Becoming visible to executives rarely ended well for people at his level. But something stopped him. Perhaps the memory of his commanding officer who'd recognized Miguel's potential and encouraged him to use all his skills, not just the ones in his job description. Perhaps the thought of Sophia, who deserved a father she could be proud of. I speak Mandarin, Miguel said, the words emerging before he could reconsider. Victoria's head snapped toward him, really seeing him for the first time. What did you say? Miguel straightened to his full height, military bearing, returning automatically. I speak Mandarin, ma'am. I served 8 years in the Navy, stationed primarily in the Pacific. I worked with Chinese contractors on equipment repairs. Richard Blackwood laughed, the sound sharp with dismissal. We need a professional interpreter, not someone who picked up a few phrases on shore leave. Miguel met Victoria's eyes, directly ignoring Richard. I understand technical terminology. I've reviewed our manufacturing processes while maintaining the equipment. I can help if you need me to. Victoria's gaze intensified, assessing him with new interest. Your maintenance staff? Yes, ma'am, Miguel Santos. I've been with Sterling for 3 years. The intercom buzzed. Jennifer's voice sounded strained. Ms. Sterling, the Chen delegation is in the lobby. Victoria looked from Miguel to Richard, then back to Miguel, weighing impossible options in seconds. Miguel recognized the calculation in her eyes, the same one he'd made countless times on aircraft carriers when standard procedures failed and improvisation became necessary. What's your clearance level? She asked. Level 3 maintenance. I have access to all manufacturing, specifications, and technical documentation. She made her decision with a sharp nod. Jennifer, bring Mr. Santos a company jacket and tie from the executive closet. Richard, brief him on the key points while I greet the delegation. Richard's face flushed with anger. Victoria, this is insane. You can't seriously consider letting a maintenance worker represent Sterling in the most important negotiation of the year. Do you have a better solution in the next 60 seconds? Victoria snapped. Because that's all the time we have. Richard fell silent, seething. Victoria turned back to Miguel. Mr. Santos, I'm placing an extraordinary amount of trust in you. If you can get us through this meeting successfully, I'll be extremely grateful. If not, she left the consequence unspoken. Miguel nodded. I understand, ma'am. As Victoria left to greet the Chinese delegation, Richard thrust a tablet into Miguel's hands. Key terms and specifications. If you embarrass this company, I'll personally ensure you never work in Dallas again. Miguel scanned the document quickly, mentally translating technical terms into Mandarin. The challenge centered him activating the same focus he'd relied on during high-pressure repair situations in the Navy. Jennifer returned with a navy blue blazer bearing the Sterling logo and a matching tie. Miguel quickly pulled the jacket over his work shirt and adjusted the tie, grateful that his uniform had always been neatly pressed despite the nature of his work. Through the conference room windows, Miguel watched Victoria greeting 5 men in the lobby. Her body language was perfect, confident, welcoming, showing no sign of the crisis unfolding behind the scenes. The delegation followed her toward the elevator. Remember, Richard hissed, you're here as a last resort. Translate directly. Don't embellish or attempt to negotiate. Miguel didn't respond. Instead, he centered himself with a deep breath, the way he always did before critical repairs. Tools might change, but the fundamentals remain the same. Identify the problem. Assess available resources, execute with precision. The conference room door opened. Victoria entered first, her professional smile firmly in place. Gentlemen, welcome to Sterling Dynamics. Please make yourselves comfortable. The delegation entered. 4 men in tailored suits and 1 older man whose presence commanded attention despite his smaller stature. Mr. Chen, undoubtedly. His calculating eyes swept the room, lingering briefly on Miguel before settling on Victoria. Mrs. Sterling, Mr. Chen spoke in heavily accented English. Thank you for invitation. We are eager to discuss partnership. Victoria gestured to the seats. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our team. You know Richard Blackwood, our VP of Operations. And this is Miguel Santos, our Technical Communications Specialist. The title was improvised but presented with such confidence that even Miguel almost believed it was his actual position. The delegation nodded politely. Unfortunately, Victoria continued, our primary interpreter had an emergency this morning. Mr. Santos will be assisting with translation today. Mr. Chen's expression revealed nothing, but one of his associates whispered something to another, eyebrows raised. Miguel stepped forward and bowed slightly, addressing Mr. Chen in Mandarin. Honored Mr. Chen, welcome to Sterling Dynamics. We deeply appreciate you traveling so far to meet with us today. The surprise on Mr. Chen's face was quickly replaced by interest. He responded in rapid Mandarin, testing Miguel's abilities. Your Mandarin is unexpected from an American company's technical specialist. Where did you learn to speak so fluently? Miguel maintained eye contact, responding at the same pace. I served in the United States Navy for 8 years, stationed throughout the Pacific. I worked closely with Chinese contractors on equipment maintenance and repair. Technical language became necessary for ensuring safety and precision. Mr. Chen smiled, the first genuine expression Miguel had seen from him. He turned to Victoria and spoke in English. Mrs. Sterling, your company continues to surprise me. Shall we begin? Victoria's relief was visible only to those who had seen her panic moments before. Absolutely. We've prepared a detailed presentation on the manufacturing specifications. As Victoria launched into her presentation, Miguel positioned himself beside her, translating complex manufacturing terms and technical specifications into fluent Mandarin. When questions arose about torque requirements or material tolerances, Miguel didn't just translate. He understood the underlying engineering concepts, explaining them with the clarity of someone who had physically built and repaired similar systems. The tension in the room gradually dissolved. Mr. Chen began asking more detailed questions about production capabilities, with Miguel translating both the questions and Victoria's responses. When technical terminology became too specialized for direct translation, Miguel adapted using analogies and practical examples that resonated with the delegation. During a particularly complex explanation of Sterling's quality control process, Mr. Chen interrupted with a question in Mandarin about failure rates in extreme temperature conditions. Miguel translated for Victoria, but she hesitated, uncertain about the specific testing parameters. If I may, Miguel added in English, looking to Victoria for permission. At her nod, he continued in Mandarin, explaining how the maintenance team regularly tested equipment beyond manufacturer specifications, including temperature stress tests that exceeded anything the machines would encounter in normal operation. Mr. Chen leaned forward, intrigued. You speak from personal experience with these tests? Yes, sir, Miguel responded. I've personally maintained these systems and verified their performance under extreme conditions. Mr. Chen turned to his associates, speaking rapidly in Mandarin. Miguel caught phrases about practical knowledge and hands-on verification, terms that indicated growing confidence in Sterling's capabilities. Victoria, sensing the shift in mood, pressed forward. Mr. Chen, we believe our manufacturing process offers unparalleled precision and reliability. The specifications outlined in Section 3 demonstrate our commitment to quality. As the meeting progressed, Miguel found himself doing more than translating. When discussing the machinery's maintenance requirements, he drew on his own experience to address concerns before they were raised. When questions arose about implementation timelines, he provided insights from the perspective of someone who understood both the engineering requirements and the practical realities of installation. 2 hours into the meeting, Mr. Chen set down his pen and looked directly at Miguel. Mr. Santos, you speak of these machines as if you know them personally. Miguel nodded. In many ways I do, sir. Machines have their own language, in how they sound, how they move, how they respond to stress. Understanding that language is as important as understanding Mandarin or English. Mr. Chen smiled and addressed Victoria. Mrs. Sterling, I have seen many impressive presentations from American companies. Beautiful slides, perfect numbers, confident promises. But today is first time I meet someone who truly knows what they sell. He gestured toward Miguel. In my experience, sir, the best connections aren't made with fancy words. They're welded with respect and tightened with trust. The room fell silent. Victoria looked at Miguel with new appreciation while Richard's expression darkened. Mr. Chen nodded, clearly impressed by Miguel's practical wisdom. Mr. Chen, Victoria said carefully, would you like to continue reviewing the contract specifications, or do you have other questions? Mr. Chen stood unexpectedly. I would like to see your factory floor, not the showcase area prepared for visitors, the real production area where Mr. Santos works. Victoria's composure faltered for just a moment. The executive tour route carefully highlighted Sterling's strengths while minimizing exposure to ongoing projects and potential issues. Taking Chen to the actual working floor wasn't part of the plan. Richard stepped forward. Mr. Chen, we'd be happy to arrange a full tour after lunch. Our executive tour coordinator could— No, Mr. Chen interrupted firmly. I want to see real factory, now with Mr. Santos's guide. All eyes turned to Victoria. Miguel could see her calculating risks and benefits, in real-time weighing corporate protocol against the potential of losing Chen's interest. Of course, she decided, Mr. Santos knows our production facilities intimately. He would be an excellent guide. As they rode the elevator down to the manufacturing floor, Richard leaned close to Victoria, whispering urgently. Miguel kept his attention on the Chinese delegation answering questions about Sterling's organizational structure and maintenance protocols. The manufacturing floor was a different world from the executive level. Loud, bright, industrial. Workers in safety gear moved purposefully among massive machines that cut shaped and assembled precision components. Unlike the polished corporate spaces above, this environment showed the honest evidence of production, the scent of metal and lubricant, the organized chaos of an active factory. Miguel led the group through the main production line, explaining each process in Mandarin. The workers looked up in surprise at seeing executives and visitors on the floor outside of scheduled tours, but Miguel greeted many by name, putting them at ease. Mr. Chen absorbed everything, asking pointed questions about equipment, capabilities, and maintenance schedules. When they reached the CNC machine Miguel had repaired earlier that day, he paused. This machine was malfunctioning this morning, Miguel explained in Mandarin. The calibration sensor was misaligned, causing precision errors of 0.02 millimeters, unacceptable for our standards. Mr. Chen examined the machine with expert eyes. How long to diagnose and repair? 4 hours, Miguel answered honestly. 3 days for the consultants before I identified the issue. Mr. Chen laughed, a genuine sound that surprised his associates. He turned to Victoria. Mrs. Sterling, you have treasure here. Man who fixes what expensive consultants cannot, who speaks multiple languages, who understands both the boardroom and the factory floor. He gestured expansively. This is why I wanted to see real factory. Contract looks good on paper, but trust is built on reality. Victoria's smile was genuine for the first time that day. Sterling Dynamics values practical expertise alongside theoretical knowledge, Mr. Chen. It's what distinguishes us from our competitors. Miguel caught the slight tension in her jaw, the tell of someone speaking an aspiration rather than a current reality. But Chen nodded, satisfied with what he'd seen. As they returned to the conference room, the atmosphere had transformed. The formal negotiation gave way to practical discussion of implementation with Miguel, bridging the gap between technical requirements and business objectives. By early afternoon, Mr. Chen was ready to move forward. I believe we have foundation for excellent partnership, he announced. My legal team will review final contract, but I am prepared to proceed with initial agreement today. Victoria maintained her professional demeanor, but Miguel caught the flash of triumph in her eyes. We're delighted to hear that, Mr. Chen. We'll prepare the preliminary paperwork immediately. As Jennifer brought the documents, Mr. Chen spoke quietly to Miguel in Mandarin. You are an unusual man, Mr. Santos. Not many would step forward as you did today. Fewer still would have the skills to succeed. He handed Miguel a business card with elegant Chinese characters beneath the English text. If you ever consider other opportunities, please contact me directly. Miguel accepted the card with appropriate respect but tucked it away without comment. His loyalty belonged to Sterling, at least for now. The signing proceeded smoothly with photographs capturing the historic moment for Sterling Dynamics. As the delegation prepared to leave, Mr. Chen shook Miguel's hand firmly. I look forward to working with you on implementation, Mr. Santos. Victoria escorted the delegation to the elevator, her posture relaxed now that its success was assured. Richard remained behind, glaring at Miguel with barely concealed hostility. Enjoy your moment, Richard said quietly. Tomorrow you'll be back fixing toilets where you belong. Miguel gathered his tools without responding. He'd learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting, especially against men whose position was their only power. When Victoria returned, her face glowed with victory. $50 million, she announced to the now empty conference room, and potential for triple that within 2 years. She turned to Miguel, who was preparing to leave quietly. Mr. Santos, a word before you go. Richard intervened smoothly. Victoria, we should contact the board immediately. They'll want to hear about today's success. In a moment, Richard, Victoria's tone left no room for argument. Please give me a few minutes with Mr. Santos. Richard departed reluctantly, leaving Miguel alone with the CEO. Victoria studied him with new interest, as if seeing a completely different person than the maintenance worker who had entered her orbit hours earlier. That was remarkable, she said finally. You didn't just save the meeting, you transformed it into something better than we had planned. Miguel shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. I just did what needed doing, ma'am. No, Victoria shook her head. What needed doing was basic translation. What you provided was insight, expertise, and cultural understanding that completely changed Chen's perception of Sterling. She leaned against the conference table. Why didn't I know about your language skills or your military background? No one asked, ma'am. The simple truth behind so many overlooked talents. Victoria nodded slowly. And now I'm asking, tell me about yourself, Mr. Santos. The real story, not just what's in your personnel file. Miguel hesitated, then decided on honesty. Born in San Antonio to Mexican immigrants, joined the Navy at 18, served 8 years as an aviation mechanic stationed primarily in the Pacific, picked up languages along the way, Spanish from home, then Mandarin, and some Portuguese during deployments. And after the Navy, a shadow crossed Miguel's face. My wife left when our daughter was 2. I took an honorable discharge to raise her myself. Civilian certifications for military experience are complicated, so I took what work I could find. He gestured to his maintenance uniform beneath the borrowed blazer. Been at Sterling 3 years now. It's stable work that pays the bills. Victoria processed this information with the same intensity she brought to business decisions. Your daughter, what's her name? Sophia, she's 7. Something softened in Victoria's expression. And you've been raising her alone while working maintenance shifts. Miguel nodded. We manage. Victoria walked to the window, looking down at the factory floor. Workers were changing shifts, the day crew heading home, while the evening team took over the massive machines. From 37 floors up, they looked like ants. Tiny, interchangeable, invisible. I started Sterling Dynamics in my apartment 15 years ago, she said unexpectedly. Everyone told me I was crazy, a woman trying to break into precision manufacturing. But I believed that excellence would speak for itself. She turned back to Miguel. What happened today makes me question how many other Miguel Santoses are working in my company, people with extraordinary skills that we've completely overlooked. Miguel remained silent, recognizing the rare moment of vulnerability from someone accustomed to projecting strength. I'd like to offer you a position, Victoria said decisively. Technical communications specialist reporting directly to me. Your responsibilities would include liaising between our engineering team and international partners with particular focus on the Asian market. Miguel blinked, surprised by the directness of the offer. That's quite a change from maintenance work. Yes, it is. The salary would reflect that change. $65,000 annually with benefits and potential for performance bonuses. Victoria watched his reaction carefully. You'd be the bridge between our technical teams and our business partners. Someone who understands both worlds. The figure hit Miguel like a physical force. His current salary was just under $42,000, enough to cover rent, food, and basic necessities with a small amount set aside for Sophia's future. This would change everything. What about my maintenance responsibilities? He asked, practical concerns emerging through the shock. We'll hire a replacement. I want you focused on maximizing the potential of this new role. Victoria's expression turned serious. I'm not offering this out of gratitude, Mr. Santos. I'm offering it because today revealed a significant gap in our organization, one that you're uniquely qualified to fill. Miguel thought of Sophia, of the opportunities this would create for her. Better schools, safer neighborhood, maybe even dance lessons she'd been begging for. But doubt lingered. Ms. Sterling, with respect, I don't have a business degree. No formal credentials beyond my military service. Victoria smiled slightly. Neither did I when I started this company. What you demonstrated today, practical knowledge, cross-cultural communication, problem-solving under pressure, can't be taught in business school. She extended her hand. Take the weekend to think about it. We can discuss details on Monday if you're interested. Miguel shook her hand, his calloused palm against her manicured fingers. Different worlds connecting through a simple human gesture. Ms. Sterling, I don't need fancy titles. I just need to know my work matters and my daughter has a future. Victoria nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind his words. Both those things are true, Mr. Santos. I look forward to your decision on Monday. After Victoria left, Miguel changed back into his regular uniform in the executive washroom, carefully hanging the borrowed blazer and tie. His reflection in the mirror looked the same. Same face, same hands, same eyes. But something had shifted internally, like a machine recalibrated to its true purpose. He thought about Richard's hostility, about the challenges of moving between worlds, from the factory floor to the executive suite. It wouldn't be easy. People like Richard would resist questioning his qualifications, waiting for him to fail. But he'd faced worse odds. Aircraft carriers in storms, raising a daughter alone, rebuilding a life after Isabella left. This was just another challenge to overcome. As Miguel drove home in his aging Ford pickup, the Dallas skyline glowed in his rearview mirror. The same city looked different now, filled with possibilities rather than limitations. His mind raced with calculations. What this would mean for their budget, for their living situation, for Sophia's future. The apartment complex was modest but clean, the kind of place where people worked hard and dreamed of something better. Miguel parked in his usual spot, gathering his lunchbox and thermos before heading to Unit 217. The sound of Sophia's laughter greeted him before he even opened the door. The tiny apartment smelled of the chicken curry Mrs. Patel had undoubtedly shared with Sophia, their neighbor's generosity a constant blessing in their lives. Papa, Sophia launched herself at him the moment he entered, her small arms wrapping around his waist. At 7, she was all energy and questions, her dark eyes intelligent and curious like his own. Mrs. Patel showed me how to make roti bread, and I got an A on my science worksheet, and Joey Martinez said girls can't be astronauts. But I told him that's stupid, because NASA has lots of girl astronauts, and, whoa, mija. Miguel laughed, lifting her into a hug. Let me get through the door first, Mrs. Patel appeared from the small kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She has been bubbling with stories since school, the older woman said with affection. And she finished all her homework except the science project you promised to help with. Miguel set Sophia down with exaggerated effort. Getting too big to lift, mija. Soon you'll be carrying me instead. Sophia giggled, racing back to the kitchen table covered with school papers and colored pencils. Papa, we have to build a model of the solar system by Friday, and I want mine to be the best one. Of course you do, Miguel smiled, thanking Mrs. Patel and walking her to the door. I can't thank you enough for staying late. Nonsense, the kind woman waved away his gratitude. Sophia is a joy, but you look different tonight, Miguel. Did something happen at work? Miguel considered how to explain the day's events. Maybe. We'll see. I'll tell you all about it tomorrow, after Mrs. Patel left Miguel, changed from his work clothes into comfortable jeans and a faded navy t-shirt. Sophia chattered about her day while he heated leftover curry and set their small table for dinner. Papa, why are you so quiet? Sophia asked, her perceptiveness catching him off guard. Did the machines break again? Miguel smiled, serving her plate before his own. No, mija, actually something interesting happened today. I helped the boss with an important meeting. Like fixing her computer? Sophia asked through a mouthful of curry. Not exactly. Miguel considered how to explain. Remember how Mama used to say I was good with languages? Sophia nodded, though her memories of Isabella were fading with each passing year. Well, today I helped translate for some important visitors from China, and afterward the boss offered me a different job. Sophia's eyes widened. A better job with more money. Yes, a lot more money. Miguel watched her reaction carefully. But it would be very different from what I do now. More time with people in offices, less time fixing machines. Sophia considered this seriously, her small brow furrowing. Would you still get to build things? You love building things, Papa. The simple observation touched him deeply. Despite their financial challenges, Sophia had always understood what brought him joy. I'd still get to work with the people who build things, making sure they understand each other. Miguel reached across the table, covering her small hand with his. But the most important thing is what it would mean for us. We could move to a better apartment, maybe even a small house someday. You could go to a better school, take dance classes like you've wanted. Sophia's eyes lit up. Really, dance classes? Then her expression turned serious again. But would you be happy Papa Mama wasn't happy and she left? I don't want you to leave. Miguel's heart clenched at the fear behind her words. Mija, listen to me. I will never leave you. Never. Happiness isn't just about what job I do. It's about being your papa and watching you grow. He squeezed her hand gently. Besides, this new job would let me use all my skills, not just some of them. That's a good thing. Sophia nodded, accepting his reassurance. Then you should take it, and we should celebrate. Oh, how should we celebrate? Miguel asked, amused by her sudden enthusiasm. Ice cream, and you promised to work on the car tonight. The '67 Mustang in their apartment complex communal garage, Miguel's ongoing restoration project, and their shared passion. He'd bought the rusted shell for $1,200 3 years ago, slowly bringing it back to life with salvaged parts and weekend work. It was more than a car. It was a legacy he was building for Sophia, teaching her about mechanics and persistence through the restoration process. You're right, I did promise. Dinner first, then we'll head down to the garage. Later that evening, Miguel sat on a rolling creeper beneath the partially restored Mustang, with Sophia handing him tools from a carefully organized tray. The community garage was little more than a covered carport with electricity, but it had become their special place, where Miguel taught Sophia the names of tools and basic mechanical principles, weaving in life lessons along the way. Hand me the 916 socket, mija, Miguel called from beneath the car. Sophia selected the correct tool with practiced ease. Papa, will we still work on the car if you take the new job? Absolutely. Miguel's voice echoed slightly under the chassis. Some things won't change, Sophia. This is our project no matter what. As Miguel tightened the final bolt on the transmission mount, his mind returned to Victoria Sterling's offer. The position would transform their lives financially, but it would also challenge him in ways maintenance work never had. Office politics, executive, expectations, the constant scrutiny of people like Richard Blackwood, all obstacles to navigate. But today had proven something important. The skills he'd developed through military service and practical experience had value beyond the maintenance shop. For the first time since leaving the Navy, Miguel felt fully seen, his complete capabilities recognized rather than just the narrow slice required for his current position. He slid out from beneath the car, wiping his hands on a shop rag. Sophia sat cross-legged on an overturned milk crate, her school notebook open, as she sketched designs for the Mustang's eventual paint job. What do you think Mija read with racing stripes or classic blue? Sophia looked up, her expression serious. Blue, like the ocean you used to sail on. Miguel smiled, realizing how much of himself he'd shared with her through stories of his Navy days. Blue it is then. He glanced at his watch. Time to pack up. School night. As they gathered their tools, Miguel made his decision. Monday morning, he would accept Victoria Sterling's offer, not just for the financial benefits, but for the chance to be whole again, to use all his capabilities rather than just a fraction of his potential. Back in their apartment, as he tucked Sophia into bed, she asked the question that had clearly been on her mind all evening. Papa, if you become important at work, will you still have time for me? Miguel sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her dark hair away from her forehead. Sophia listened carefully. No job will ever be more important than you. Yeah, we're a team, you and me. That doesn't change no matter what. She smiled, reassured, and hugged her stuffed dolphin, a souvenir from Miguel's Navy days. I think you'll be really good at the new job, Papa. You're good at everything. As Sophia drifted to sleep, Miguel sat in the living room reviewing the business terminology he'd need to master for his new role. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the aging air conditioner and the occasional car passing outside. On the coffee table sat a framed photograph of Miguel in his Navy uniform holding baby Sophia, his expression a mixture of pride and terror at the responsibility of fatherhood. Beside it lay Victoria Sterling's business card, the embossed silver logo catching the light like a beacon pointing toward a different future. Miguel picked it up, running his thumb over the raised lettering. Sterling Dynamics. The company's name had never held personal meaning before today. Now it represented a crossroads in his life, a chance to redefine himself beyond the limitations others had placed on him. Miguel set the card down and opened his laptop, searching for information about Chen Corporation and Asian manufacturing standards. If Monday would begin his new chapter, he was determined to be prepared. Sophia deserved a father who seized opportunities when they appeared, who demonstrated that persistence and skill could overcome circumstances. Outside the window, Dallas glittered with possibility, the city lights promising that tomorrow could be different from today. Miguel Santos, maintenance technician, Navy veteran, single father, allowed himself to imagine a future where all his worlds connected rather than collided, where the barrier between the factory floor and the executive suite became a bridge instead, one that he was uniquely qualified to build. Monday morning dawned with unusual clarity for Dallas in late summer. Miguel Santos stood before his bathroom mirror, adjusting an unfamiliar tie, navy blue with subtle gray pinstripes purchased yesterday during a rush trip to the discount department store. His reflection shows a man transformed from maintenance worker to office professional, though his hands still bore the calluses and small scars of years of mechanical work. "Papa, you look different," Sophia observed from the doorway, her school backpack already in place, hair neatly braided the way Mrs. Patel had taught her, like the dads on TV. Miguel smiled, smoothing the second-hand blazer he'd found on the same shopping trip. Not quite tailored, but respectable enough for his first day in the executive world. Different job, different uniform, mija, but still the same papa. Her small hand slipped into his as they walked to the kitchen. "Will they let you fix things in your new clothes? Won't they get dirty?" The innocent question highlighted the strange transition he was making, from a world where productivity was measured in repairs, completed to one where success might be determined by words in meetings and numbers on spreadsheets. "This job is more about helping people understand each other," Miguel explained, pouring cereal for Sophia while checking the time. They needed to leave in 15 minutes to maintain their morning schedule. Sophia to school then, Miguel to Sterling Dynamics for his first day as technical communication specialist. "Like being a translator?" Sophia asked between bites. "Something like that." Miguel packed Sophia's lunch, sandwich apple, the cookies they'd baked together Sunday night. "I'll be helping the engineers explain things to the business people and helping the business people explain what they need to the engineers." Sophia nodded sagely. "Like when you explained to me how the car engine works, but simpler." Miguel laughed, impressed by her insight. Exactly like that. The morning routine continued with familiar precision despite the nervous energy coursing through him. Drop Sophia at school, quick conversation with her teacher about the upcoming science project. Then the drive to Sterling Dynamics. The same route he'd taken for 3 years, but today feeling entirely new. The employee parking lot separated executives from hourly workers with unsubtle demarcation. For the first time, Miguel parked his aging pickup in the section reserved for salaried staff, feeling oddly conspicuous among the newer vehicles. As he walked toward the main entrance, rather than the service entrance he'd used for years, a familiar voice called out, "Well, look at you all dressed up like management." Frank Wilson, head of the maintenance night shift, leaned against his weather-beaten truck, coffee thermos in hand. At 68, Frank had been maintaining industrial equipment since before Miguel was born, his weathered face mapping decades of hard work and practical wisdom. "Morning, Frank." Miguel stopped, grateful for the friendly face amid the morning's strangeness. Frank's eyes crinkled with both amusement and genuine pride. "Heard about your promotion. Quite the leap from maintenance to rubbing elbows with the suits." He gestured toward Miguel's new attire. "The tie's crooked, by the way." Miguel adjusted it self-consciously. "Feel like I'm wearing a costume." "You'll adjust." Frank took a sip from his thermos. "Just remember, those fancy offices upstairs, they only exist because of what we build down here. Don't let them make you forget that." The simple reminder centered Miguel. "Not much chance of that. I still have grease under my nails that won't scrub out." Frank nodded approvingly. "Good, that's your advantage, son. You understand both worlds." His expression turned more serious. "Watch yourself around Blackwood and his crowd. They won't appreciate someone moving up from the floor without the right pedigree." "I can handle Blackwood." Frank's laugh held years of factory floor wisdom. "Sure you can, just like a wrench can handle a computer. Different tools, different worlds." He checked his watch. Better get moving. I hear Sterling herself is waiting for you. Miguel nodded thanks and continued toward the main entrance, Frank's warning echoing in his mind. The reception area, a space he had only passed through briefly during his initial hiring, now greeted him with cool corporate efficiency. The receptionist looked up with the practiced smile reserved for visitors, not recognizing him, despite his 3 years with the company. Good morning, I'm Miguel Santos, starting a new position today with Ms. Sterling. Recognition flickered across her face, not of Miguel personally, but of the story that had circulated through office gossip over the weekend. The maintenance worker who saved the Chen meeting, the military veteran with hidden talents, Victoria Sterling's unexpected project. Of course, Mr. Santos, Ms. Sterling's office is on the 37th floor. Jennifer will meet you at the elevator. The executive elevator moved with quiet precision, its polished interior reflecting Miguel's uncertain expression. As promised, Jennifer waited when the doors opened, tablet in hand, professional smile in place. Mr. Santos, welcome to Executive Operations. Ms. Sterling is looking forward to working with you. Her efficiency masked any personal opinion about his unconventional promotion. I'll show you to your new office first, then we have orientation scheduled at 9, followed by a meeting with Ms. Sterling at 10. The word office caught Miguel off guard. He'd expected a desk in an open area, not a dedicated space. Jennifer led him down a hallway lined with glass-walled offices, each occupied by people who radiated corporate purpose. She stopped at an empty office, smaller than the others, but still impressively appointed, with a desk computer visitor chairs and a window overlooking the manufacturing facility below. This will be your workspace, Jennifer explained, handing him a keycard. Your system credentials are active as of this morning. It has transferred appropriate files based on your new clearance level. She gestured to a stack of folders on the desk. These contain background on the Chen contract and our current international projects. Ms. Sterling thought you'd want to review them before your meeting. Miguel set his worn leather messenger bag, another weekend purchase, on the desk. The office felt alien, like a space he was borrowing rather than occupying. The maintenance team is already training your replacement. Jennifer continued checking items off her mental list. Though Ms. Sterling mentioned you might consult occasionally on specialized equipment issues. That small connection to his previous role provided unexpected relief. Thank you, Jennifer. Of course. Orientation in 20 minutes, 32nd floor conference room C. With that, she departed, leaving Miguel alone in his new domain. He moved to the window, looking down at the factory floor where he'd spent the last 3 years. From this height, the massive machines and the people operating them seemed small and distant. Yet Miguel could name every piece of equipment, identify most of the workers by their movements alone, pinpoint which assembly stations would need maintenance by month's end. That knowledge felt important, a tether to reality amid the strange unreality of his new position. A knock at the open door interrupted his thoughts. Victoria Sterling stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that radiated authority without ostentation. Mr. Santos, how does it feel? She gestured to the office. Different, Miguel admitted, but I'm adjusting. Victoria entered, surveying the space with a critical eye. We'll get you properly set up over the next few days. For now, the basics should suffice. She turned her attention fully to him, assessing his appearance with the same precision. The clothes work, not designer but appropriate. We'll arrange a meeting with our corporate image consultant later this week. Miguel tensed slightly at the implication that he needed further transformation. Victoria noticed immediately. Not to change who you are, Mr. Santos. Your authenticity is an asset, but certain clients and partners have expectations about appearances. Meeting those expectations makes your job easier. She moved to the window, joining him and looking down at the factory floor. How's your daughter taking the change? The personal question surprised him. Sophia's excited, more about the possibility of dance lessons than my new title. A hint of a smile crossed Victoria's face. Children have a way of keeping our priorities straight. She turned back to business. I've adjusted your orientation schedule. The standard corporate training isn't relevant to your unique position. Instead, you'll meet with our international team this morning, then join me for the executive briefing at 11. Miguel nodded, grateful for her pragmatic approach. One more thing, Victoria added, her tone shifting slightly. You'll encounter resistance. Richard Blackwood and several other executives are skeptical about your promotion. They believe I've elevated you based on a single lucky performance rather than genuine qualification. The directness was refreshing. I expected that. Good. Don't waste energy trying to win them over with words. Demonstrate your value through results. Victoria checked her watch, a subtle but clearly expensive timepiece. The Chen implementation team will be your first test. They're waiting in conference room A. I suggest you handle that before orientation. Before Miguel could respond, she was already moving toward the door. We'll talk more at 11. Good luck, Mr. Santos. Alone again, Miguel took a deep breath, centering himself. The Chen implementation team meant engineers and project managers responsible for executing the contract he'd helped secure. His first real challenge in the new role. He gathered the Chen contract folders, scanning key details as he walked to conference room A. The space was occupied by 6 people whose body language immediately told a story. 4 clustered together on one side of the table, deep in technical discussion. 2 others separated both physically and attitudinally, checking emails with obvious impatience. Engineers versus management. The divide was familiar from his Navy days. Technical specialists focusing on how to accomplish tasks, managers concerned with deadlines and budgets. Both essential, both frequently failing to understand each other's priorities. Good morning, Miguel announced from the doorway. 6 heads turned, expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism to outright dismissal. A woman with prematurely silver hair and practical clothing rose first. Mr. Santos, I'm Dr. Helen Chen, lead engineer for the Precision Components team. Her handshake was firm, her assessment direct. We've heard about your assistance with the contract negotiations. Thank you for joining us. Miguel recognized a potential ally. Thank you for accommodating my schedule change. I understand you're developing the implementation timeline. A man in an expensive suit checked his watch with theatrical impatience. We've been at this for 90 minutes already. The timeline is straightforward. Equipment delivery in 6 weeks installation, beginning in 8 weeks, full production by quarter's end. Helen's expression tightened. And as I've been explaining, Mr. Vaughn, that schedule ignores critical calibration requirements. The precision tolerances specified in the contract require at least 2 additional weeks of testing before full production. The classic impasse, technical requirements versus management deadlines. Miguel set his folders on the table, choosing to stand rather than immediately align with either group physically. I reviewed the contract specifications this morning. He began addressing both factions equally. Mr. Chen was particularly impressed by our quality assurance protocols, specifically the stress testing under variable conditions. Mr. Vaughn waved dismissively. Marketing promises. We can streamline those processes once we have the contract. Miguel met his gaze steadily. Those marketing promises are contractual obligations clearly specified in Section 3.7. Mr. Chen's technical team will be verifying our compliance during the implementation phase. On the engineers exchanged glances, surprise and approval evident. Miguel continued, turning toward Helen. However, I also noted that our standard calibration protocol includes redundant testing cycles that might be optimized. During my time in maintenance, we developed a parallel testing sequence that reduced calibration time by approximately 30% without compromising precision. Now it was Helen's turn to look surprised. You're familiar with the MT5000 calibration sequence. I maintained 3 of them on the East production line, Miguel confirmed. The manufacturer's protocol is unnecessarily sequential. With proper setup, several calibration steps can run concurrently. Helen's expression shifted from surprise to genuine interest. That could potentially address our timeline concerns without compromising quality. Miguel turned back to Vaughn. Which might allow us to meet management's delivery targets while still fulfilling the technical requirements that secured the contract. The tension in the room subtly recalibrated, not eliminated, but shifted toward potential resolution. Vaughn studied Miguel with new calculation, reassessing his initial dismissal. You're suggesting we modify standard protocols based on maintenance experience. The skepticism remained, but with a question rather than outright rejection. Progress. I'm suggesting we consider all available expertise to meet both technical and business objectives. Miguel replied evenly. The contract is worth $50 million because Sterling Dynamics promised precision manufacturing with reliable delivery. We need both elements to succeed. For the next 45 minutes, Miguel facilitated a discussion that gradually bridged the gap between engineering requirements and management expectations. His unique position, understanding both the technical details and the business imperatives, allowed him to translate each group's concerns into terms the other could appreciate. By session's end, they had outlined a revised implementation schedule that accommodated the critical calibration requirements while still meeting quarterly objectives. As the meeting concluded, Helen approached Miguel. "That was unexpected," she said quietly. "Most people from the executive floor don't understand what happens on the production floor." "I spent 3 years on that floor," Miguel reminded her. "The grease stains don't wash out that quickly." Helen smiled, a genuine expression rather than corporate politeness. "We have a team meeting Thursday morning. Would you join us? We could use someone who speaks both languages." "Both languages? Engineering and management," Helen clarified. "They're different worlds with different vocabularies. You seem fluent in both." Miguel nodded, recognizing the echo of Victoria's words about building bridges between worlds. "Thursday works. Send me the details." As the engineers departed, Vaughn lingered, studying Miguel with calculating eyes. "Sterling's pet project," he said finally. "That's what Blackwood calls you." Miguel met his gaze without responding, waiting for the actual message beneath the provocation. "Richard believes you'll fail within a month," Vaughn continued. "That your promotion is Victoria's latest impulse, no different than the meditation room nobody uses, or the sustainability initiative that died quietly last quarter." "And what do you believe, Mr. Vaughn?" Miguel asked, genuinely curious. Vaughn adjusted his expensive cufflinks, a nervous habit rather than necessity. "I believe in results. That meeting was moderately productive, which is more than I expected." He gathered his materials with efficient movements. "But one meeting doesn't make a career. The real test will be sustained performance." "Fair assessment," Miguel acknowledged. Vaughn paused at the door. "A word of advice, Santos. Victoria Sterling builds companies, not careers. She'll use your talents while they serve her purpose, then discard you when circumstances change. I've seen it happen to others. Don't mistake opportunity for loyalty." The warning delivered, Vaughn departed, leaving Miguel to consider the complex politics surrounding his new position. Victoria's project, Blackwood's predicted failure. Caught between executives with competing agendas, Miguel recognized the dangerous territory he'd entered, far more treacherous than any mechanical problem he'd faced. His orientation proceeded efficiently, a streamlined version of Sterling Dynamics' standard process. By 11, Miguel had received his executive credentials, completed necessary paperwork, and begun to understand the organizational structure he'd joined. The experience felt surreal. 3 years working in the building, yet only now learning how the company truly functioned beyond the factory floor. The executive briefing occupied the largest conference room on the 37th floor, a space Miguel had only glimpsed during his maintenance visits. 20 people were already seated when he arrived, their conversations creating a low hum of ambition and strategy. Victoria sat at the head of the massive table, reviewing documents while simultaneously addressing questions from Jennifer and another assistant. Richard Blackwood occupied the seat immediately to Victoria's right, his position a visual statement of hierarchy and influence. He looked up as Miguel entered, his expression flickering between disdain and calculation, before settling into practiced neutrality. Miguel hesitated, uncertain where to sit in this clearly choreographed arrangement of corporate power. Victoria glanced up, noticing his momentary pause. "Mr. Santos," she called, gesturing to an empty chair halfway down the table. "Join us." As Miguel took his seat, he became aware of the subtle assessment occurring around him. Executives evaluating his presence, measuring his potential threat or benefit to their own positions. The politics of the factory floor existed here too, but with higher stakes and more sophisticated strategies. Victoria called the meeting to order with efficient authority. "Good morning, everyone. We have several key items on today's agenda, beginning with the Chen contract implementation." She nodded toward Miguel. "As you've all heard by now, Mr. Santos has joined our executive team as technical communications specialist, reporting directly to me. His initial focus will be ensuring successful execution of the Chen agreement." Richard cleared his throat. Perhaps Mr. Santos could share his background with the team, since this is a rather unconventional appointment. The challenge was delivered with perfect corporate politeness, the aggression visible only in Richard's eyes. Victoria's expression remained neutral, but Miguel caught the slight tension in her jaw, annoyance at Richard's undermining tactic. Excellent suggestion, Victoria agreed smoothly. Mr. Santos. Miguel recognized the moment for what it was, his first public test. He straightened in his chairs, calling on the military bearing that had served him well in difficult situations. I served 8 years in the United States Navy as an aviation systems technician, specializing in electronic systems maintenance for FA-18 Super Hornets. The simple statement established his technical credentials without embellishment. My deployments included extensive time in the Pacific region, where I developed proficiency in Mandarin and Portuguese while coordinating with local contractors on equipment maintenance. He noted the subtle shift in several executives' expressions, the military background commanding a respect that maintenance work did not. For the past 3 years, I've maintained precision manufacturing equipment at Sterling Dynamics, gaining firsthand knowledge of our production capabilities and technical specifications. I look forward to applying that practical experience to our international partnerships. Concise, factual, without apology or justification for his unconventional path. Victoria nodded slightly, approval of his approach. Thank you, Mr. Santos, she said, moving the meeting forward. Now, regarding the Chen implementation timeline, the briefing proceeded efficiently with each department head reporting on quarterly objectives and ongoing initiatives. Miguel observed the dynamics carefully, noting which executives commanded respect through expertise versus positional authority, which projects received Victoria's focused attention versus polite acknowledgement. Richard maintained his position of apparent influence, offering commentary on various reports and occasionally redirecting discussions. Yet Miguel noticed that Victoria rarely acted on his suggestions without first seeking input from others, a subtle limitation of his actual power. When the international projects came under discussion, Victoria directed all questions about the Chen contract to Miguel. The inquiries began as basic tests of his knowledge: timeline questions, technical specifications, contractual obligations. Miguel answered each with specific practical information, demonstrating both understanding of the agreement and the manufacturing realities behind it. Gradually, the questions evolved from tests to genuine consultation. By meeting's end, several executives had made notes to follow up with him on specific aspects of the implementation. Even Richard had shifted from overt skepticism to watchful assessment, not acceptance, but recognition that Miguel's knowledge exceeded his expectations. As the meeting concluded, Victoria asked Miguel to remain behind. When the room cleared, she studied him with calculating precision. "You handled that well," she observed. "Military background was the right emphasis. It contextualizes your technical knowledge and language skills in a framework they respect." Miguel nodded, recognizing the strategic nature of her assessment. "Richard wasn't subtle about testing me." "Richard hasn't been subtle since I've known him," Victoria replied dryly, "but he represents a perspective I need to consider. The traditional corporate viewpoint that values credentials over demonstrated capability." She gathered her materials with efficient movements. "Your background makes you valuable, Mr. Santos, precisely because it's unconventional. You see opportunities and connections that others miss because they followed identical paths to identical perspectives." She checked her watch. "I have a board call in 10 minutes. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow during our project review." Miguel returned to his new office, processing the morning's experiences. The transition felt simultaneously overwhelming and oddly familiar, reminiscent of his first days on an aircraft carrier, navigating complex systems and hierarchies while proving his competence in a new environment. His computer pinged with meeting requests and email introductions, the machinery of corporate life already incorporating him into its operations. Among them was a message from Victoria's assistant Jennifer with a simple directive. "Ms. Sterling requests that you visit the manufacturing floor this afternoon to assess the Chen production line preparation. Report directly to her tomorrow." The assignment felt like both test and lifeline, an opportunity to reconnect with the familiar world of machines and maintenance while fulfilling his new executive function. Miguel sent a quick acknowledgement, then prepared for his return to the factory floor, this time entering as management rather than maintenance. The transformation was immediately apparent when he arrived at the production area. The security guard who had greeted Miguel casually for 3 years now checked his new executive credentials with careful attention. Workers who had joked with him that morning now nodded respectfully, their behavior shifting to accommodate his changed status. "Look who's gone corporate," called a familiar voice. Raj, his former apprentice, approached with a mixture of admiration and uncertainty. "Fancy clothes executive badge. You moving up in the world, Miguel." "Just a different assignment," Miguel replied, keeping his tone casual. "Still the same job and making sure things work properly." Raj's expression relaxed slightly. "They're saying you saved the Chen contract, that you speak Chinese and impressed the big boss." Word traveled fast on the factory floor, though not always accurately. Mandarin, not Chinese exactly, and it was a team effort. Miguel gestured toward the east production line. "I need to check the preparations for the Chen equipment installation. Want to show me what's happening?" The simple request, treating Raj as a valuable resource rather than a subordinate, re-established their connection. As they walked through the production area, Miguel carefully navigated his new status, demonstrating respect for the expertise around him while still fulfilling his assessment role. The afternoon provided critical insights about the Chen implementation, information not captured in reports or meetings. Miguel discovered potential space constraints for the new equipment, power supply limitations that might affect calibration procedures and scheduling conflicts with existing production requirements. Each issue represented a gap between executive planning and shop floor reality, exactly the disconnections his new role was designed to bridge. As his factory visit concluded, Miguel encountered Frank Wilson finishing his pre-shift inspection. The older man took in Miguel's business attire with a knowing smile. "First day with the suits," Frank observed. "How's the view from upstairs?" "Different perspective," Miguel admitted, "but the same fundamental challenges." Frank nodded toward a nearby CNC machine. "That one's making a noise it shouldn't. Your replacement doesn't hear it yet. Experience takes time." Miguel listened carefully, immediately identifying the slight irregularity in the machine's operation. "Bearing assembly starting to wear. Probably has another 2 weeks before it needs replacement." 3 weeks according to the manual," Frank corrected with a grin. "But you're right, 2 weeks in real-world conditions. That's the kind of knowledge they can't teach in business school." He studied Miguel with grandfatherly concern. "You keeping your balance up there, easy to get lost in spreadsheets and forget what they represent." "I'm trying," Miguel acknowledged. "It's a different world." "Nah," Frank shook his head. "Same world, different floor. Remember that, and you'll do fine." He checked his watch. "Night shift starting soon. Should get my team organized." As they parted, Frank added casually, "By the way, Blackwood was down here yesterday asking questions about you. Wanted to know if you'd ever had disciplinary issues, conflicts with management, that sort of thing." Miguel tensed. "What did you tell him?" "The truth," Frank shrugged. "That you're the most reliable technician I've worked with, that you solve problems others can't see, and that he should worry less about where you came from and more about what you can do." Frank's weathered face creased with satisfaction. He didn't much like that answer. The warning registered clearly. Richard wasn't merely skeptical. He was actively seeking ammunition. "Thanks for the heads up." "Watch yourself," Frank advised. "Men like Blackwood don't appreciate being shown up by someone they consider beneath them. He'll look for ways to make you fail." Miguel carried this caution with him as he returned to the executive floor, his mind processing both the technical assessments and the political landscape surrounding his new position. The office felt less alien now, contextualized by his visits to both worlds within Sterling Dynamics. Before leaving for the day, Miguel prepared a detailed report on the Chen implementation challenges he'd identified, including practical recommendations for addressing each issue. The report blended technical expertise with business considerations, a bridge document reflecting his unique position within the company. His phone chimed with a text from Mrs. Patel Sophia, "Home safe, starting homework." He replied with thanks, promising to be home by 6, maintaining the schedule that prioritized his evenings with his daughter, despite his changed professional circumstances. As Miguel gathered his things, a figure appeared in his doorway. Richard Blackwood, his expression carefully neutral. "Santos, I hear you spent the afternoon back on the factory floor." The observation carried a subtle implication that Miguel belonged there rather than in an executive office. Assessing the Chen implementation preparations, Miguel confirmed, keeping his tone professional. Several technical considerations didn't appear in the planning documents. Richard leaned against the doorframe, studying Miguel with calculated intensity. Victoria has a habit of becoming enthusiastic about new projects. She identified promising talent before, people she believed would transform the company with their unique perspectives. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Most lasted less than 6 months. The warning echoed Vaughn's earlier comments, suggesting a pattern rather than isolated opinion. Miguel met Richard's gaze steadily. I appreciate the historical context. Richard straightened, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit. The Chen contract is significant, but it's one agreement among many. Sterling Dynamics succeeded before your involvement and will continue regardless of your contribution. He delivered the statement as simple fact rather than threat. I've been with Victoria for 12 years. I've seen her passions come and go. Miguel recognized the territorial display beneath the corporate veneer. I'm focused on fulfilling my current responsibilities, Mr. Blackwood. The company's long-term strategy remains your domain. The careful deference seemed to satisfy something in Richard. Good. Understanding one's proper place is essential for organizational harmony. He nodded slightly, the conversation complete from his perspective, and departed without further comment. The exchange crystallized Miguel's understanding of the environment he'd entered. Richard viewed him not merely as an unqualified intruder, but as a potential threat to established power structures. Victoria saw him as a valuable asset with unique capabilities, but perhaps also as a temporary solution rather than long-term investment. Miguel finished packing his bag, his mind settling into strategic clarity. His value lay precisely in his ability to navigate both worlds, the practical reality of the factory floor and the strategic vision of the executive suite. Neither Richard's opposition nor Victoria's sponsorship would ultimately determine his success. Results would. That evening, as Miguel helped Sophia with her science project, a solar system model featuring planets made from painted styrofoam balls, he considered how to explain his first day in the new position. Did you talk to important people, Papa? Sophia asked, carefully painting Neptune a deep blue. I talked to all kinds of people, Miguel replied, helping her measure the correct orbital distance. Some think they're more important than others. Sophia considered this with childish wisdom. Like Joey Martinez. He thinks he's important because his dad has a big car, but Mrs. Reynolds says we're all equally important in our classroom community. Miguel smiled at the comparison. Something like that, mija. In my new job, I need to help people who think they're very different understand that they're actually part of the same team. Is that hard? Sophia looked up, brush poised mid-stroke. Sometimes, Miguel admitted, people get used to seeing things one way. It takes effort to help them see differently. Like when you showed me that the moon isn't actually changing shape, it's just how we see it from Earth. Sophia asked, connecting to a lesson he'd taught her months earlier. Exactly like that. Miguel marveled at her ability to find perfect analogies in her limited experience. Different perspectives of the same reality. As they completed the project, Miguel's phone rang. An unfamiliar number with a Shanghai area code. He answered cautiously. Mr. Santos, this is Wei Jiang, Mr. Chen's technical director. The voice spoke in Mandarin, formal but friendly. I apologize for calling after business hours, but Mr. Chen suggested I contact you directly regarding the implementation specifications. The unexpected international call represented both opportunity and challenge. Miguel switched seamlessly to Mandarin, discussing technical details while helping Sophia finish her project, straddling his professional and personal worlds simultaneously. The conversation lasted nearly 30 minutes, covering complex manufacturing specifications and calibration requirements. Throughout, Miguel maintained his focus on both the critical business discussion and Sophia's needs, helping her attach the final planet while clarifying torque specifications for the Chinese engineer. When the call concluded, Sophia looked at him with wide-eyed admiration. Papa, you were speaking Chinese again and talking about machines at the same time. Mandarin, Miguel corrected gently. And yes, helping people understand each other is my job now. Sophia nodded, studying their completed solar system model with satisfaction. I think you're good at your new job, Papa. You help me understand things all the time. The simple validation meant more than any corporate acknowledgement. As they prepared dinner together, a routine Miguel was determined to maintain despite his changing professional circumstances. He reflected on the day's lessons. The corporate world operated by different rules than the factory floor, but the fundamental principles remained consistent: demonstrate value, build alliances, recognize threats, and above all, maintain integrity across contexts. Later that evening, after Sophia was asleep, Miguel received an email from Victoria Sterling, sent well outside business hours, indicating her own extended workday. Mr. Santos, Jennifer mentioned your factory floor assessment today. Please bring your complete observations to our 9 a.m. meeting tomorrow. The board is particularly concerned about the Chen implementation timeline. Your practical perspective will be valuable. The message confirmed Miguel's understanding of his precarious position, valued for his unique insights, but constantly being evaluated against shifting corporate expectations. His response was simple: comprehensive assessment complete. We'll present findings at 9 a.m. The following morning began earlier than usual. Miguel arrived at Sterling Dynamics by 7:30, allowing time to refine his presentation and prepare for potentially hostile questions from Richard or other skeptical executives. The building felt different at this hour, quieter, with only the most ambitious or anxious employees at their desks. To his surprise, Victoria was already in her office, reviewing documents with focused intensity. She glanced up as he passed her open door. "Mr. Santos, you're early." Her observation carried approval rather than question. "Preparing for the briefing," Miguel explained. Victoria gestured for him to enter. "Let me see your assessment." Miguel presented his report, a detailed analysis of the practical challenges facing the Chen implementation, with specific recommendations for addressing each issue. Victoria reviewed it with practiced efficiency, her expression revealing nothing. This identifies three critical issues not captured in the engineering team's analysis. She noted, marking specific sections, particularly the power supply limitations for the calibration equipment. The specifications were reviewed theoretically, Miguel explained, but the practical implementation requires consideration of existing systems and their current load capacity. Victoria studied him with new calculation. "You identified this from a single afternoon on the production floor." "I've been maintaining those systems for 3 years," Miguel reminded her. The knowledge was already there, just applied to a new context. She nodded, decision made. The presentation format needs adjustment for the executive audience. Less technical detail up front, more emphasis on business implications. Victoria made several notations on his document. Lead with the timeline impact and cost considerations. Technical specifics should support those points rather than dominate the discussion. The guidance wasn't criticism, but practical assistance, helping him translate factory floor observations into executive-level concerns. Miguel absorbed the lesson, recognizing its value for navigating his new environment. "Richard will challenge your assessment," Victoria continued matter-of-factly. "He's already advocated for an accelerated timeline to impress the board. Your report contradicts his position." "The physics of power supply limitations can't be negotiated," Miguel pointed out. Victoria's slight smile acknowledged the practical truth. "Nevertheless, Richard will try. Be prepared to defend your analysis without becoming defensive personally. The distinction matters in executive discussions." Their conversation was interrupted by Jennifer's arrival with Victoria's morning schedule and coffee. Victoria handed Miguel's report back with final guidance. "Revise according to my notes. We meet with the board in 90 minutes. The board meeting represented another elevation in Miguel's rapid professional ascent. The conference room occupied the 38th floor, a space he'd never entered during his maintenance tenure. 8 people were already seated when Victoria arrived with Miguel, older men and women whose expressions conveyed the confidence of wealth and power. Victoria made efficient introductions, positioning Miguel as our implementation specialist for the Chen contract, a focused role rather than the broader title she'd used internally. The subtle adjustment recognized the board's likely skepticism about his unconventional promotion. Richard arrived moments later, his expression tightening upon seeing Miguel already seated at the table. The dynamic was immediate and clear, territory being contested, influence being measured. Victoria opened the meeting with practiced authority. "As you know, the Chen contract represents a significant expansion of our Asian market presence. Implementation timeline and quality assurance are critical to maintaining Mr. Chen's confidence in our capabilities. She nodded toward Miguel. Mr. Santos has completed a practical assessment of our production readiness. His findings indicate several adjustments to our initial timeline. Richard interrupted smoothly. Before we consider adjustments, the board should understand that the current timeline was developed by our engineering team based on standard protocols. Any delay potentially impacts quarterly projections that have already been communicated to investors. The preemptive challenge established clear battle lines. Victoria turned to Miguel, her expression revealing nothing. Mr. Santos, please present your assessment. Miguel stood centering himself with the same focus he'd used during critical aircraft repairs under combat conditions. He began not with technical details, but with the business impact Victoria had emphasized. The Chen contract requires 3 specific quality assurance measures that exceed our standard manufacturing protocols. He explained, directing attention to the key points in his revised presentation. Implementation within the current timeline would require significant power supply upgrades not included in the initial budget projections. A board member, identified by his nameplate as Harold Winters, leaned forward. What exactly are we talking about in terms of cost and delay? Miguel presented the numbers clearly. Additional costs of approximately $2.3 million and a potential 2-week extension to the implementation timeline. Richard immediately seized on the figures. These so-called limitations weren't identified by our engineering team during contract development, he objected. We can't suddenly claim implementation challenges after securing Mr. Chen's commitment. Miguel met Richard's challenge directly but professionally. The contract specifications were reviewed theoretically by engineers who hadn't physically assessed the factory power supply capacity under current production loads. This isn't about changing requirements. It's about recognizing physical limitations of existing infrastructure. Harold Winters studied Miguel with increased interest. You identified these limitations during a single factory inspection. I maintained those systems for 3 years before moving to my current role, Miguel explained. The knowledge existed within the company, just not at the level where implementation decisions were being made. The simple statement highlighted exactly the gap his position was designed to bridge while implicitly criticizing the disconnect between executive planning and operational reality. Several board members exchanged glances, reassessing both Miguel and the situation. Victoria interjected strategically. Mr. Santos has outlined 3 potential solutions, each with different cost and timeline implications. She directed attention back to his presentation. Option 2 appears most viable from both technical and business perspectives. For the next 30 minutes, Miguel fielded increasingly specific questions about implementation challenges and solutions. Throughout, he maintained the balance Victoria had emphasized. Technical accuracy presented in business-relevant terms, practical knowledge translated for executive understanding. Richard continued raising objections, but their impact diminished as board members engaged directly with Miguel's pragmatic recommendations. By meeting's end, Harold Winters, clearly an influential voice on the board, had expressed explicit support for Miguel's proposed approach. This is exactly the kind of practical insight we need when expanding into new markets. Winters concluded, addressing Victoria rather than Miguel directly. The Chen relationship is too valuable to risk through implementation failures. I support the revised timeline and necessary investments. With Winters backing, the board approved Miguel's recommendations despite Richard's continued objections. As the meeting concluded, Victoria's slight nod conveyed both approval and expectation. One success achieved, many more required to establish lasting value. Harold Winters approached Miguel as others departed. At 67, Winters carried himself with the confident authority of someone accustomed to wealth and influence, yet his eyes held genuine curiosity rather than condescension. Sterling doesn't typically promote from maintenance directly to executive briefings. Winters observed, studying Miguel with frank assessment. Your background is military correct, aviation systems. Yes, sir, FA-18 Super Hornets primarily. Winters nodded as if confirming a private theory. My son served on the Roosevelt. Carrier operations require a particular mindset, practical problem solving under extraordinary pressure. He extended his hand. Good presentation today, Santos. We'll be watching the Chen implementation with interest. The brief exchange carried significant meaning within Sterling's corporate hierarchy, a board member acknowledging Miguel directly rather than through Victoria. As Winters departed, Richard approached his expression carefully neutral despite the meeting's outcome. "Congratulations on your first board presentation," he offered with professional courtesy that barely masked his frustration. Winters seemed impressed by your unique perspective. Miguel recognized the dangerous territory, a powerful executive whose strategy had been publicly overridden. "The board made a practical decision based on physical realities," he responded carefully. "The revised timeline still meets quarterly objectives while ensuring quality standards." Richard's smile remained fixed. "Indeed, Victoria must be pleased with her new project's performance." He straightened his already immaculate tie. "One presentation doesn't establish a career, Santos. The Chen implementation will require consistent execution over months, not moments. The real challenges are just beginning." As Richard walked away, Victoria appeared beside Miguel. "Winters doesn't engage directly with new executives very often," she observed. "His interest is significant." "Richard doesn't seem to share that interest," Miguel noted dryly. "Richard sees you as a threat to his carefully constructed influence," Victoria explained without emotion. "Previously, he controlled most information flowing between operations and executive leadership. Your direct knowledge of factory capabilities creates an alternative channel he doesn't manage." The political landscape clarified further with her assessment. Miguel was more than an unconventional promotion. He represented a structural challenge to established power dynamics. "The board approved your recommendations, which gives us temporary advantage," Victoria continued. "But Richard will look for implementation failures to validate his original position." Her expression remained professionally neutral, but her words carried unmistakable warning. "His influence extends throughout middle management. Expect resistance at multiple levels." Miguel nodded, absorbing both the victory and its limitations. "What's our next priority?" Victoria checked her watch, the gesture of someone whose time represented her most valuable currency. "The Frankfurt situation. Mueller and Associates has reported quality control issues with our European manufacturing partners. I need you to review their specifications and prepare an assessment by Friday." The assignment expanded Miguel's role beyond the Chen contract, indicating Victoria's growing confidence in his capabilities. "I'll need access to the European manufacturing documentation." "Jennifer will arrange appropriate clearances," Victoria confirmed. "One more thing. Chen's technical director contacted my office this morning. Apparently he had a productive conversation with you last night and wants you directly involved in the implementation oversight." The information carried complex implications. External validation of Miguel's value, but also potential circumvention of normal reporting structures. Victoria studied his reaction carefully. "I received a call from Mr. Zhang yesterday evening," Miguel acknowledged. "He had technical questions about calibration specifications. I didn't realize I should have directed him elsewhere." "You handled it correctly," Victoria assured him. "Direct communication with the client's technical team is precisely what your role should facilitate." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "However, keeping me informed of such contacts helps maintain appropriate alignment." The gentle correction established clear expectations. Initiative was valued, but transparency required. Miguel nodded understanding. "I'll copy you on all client communications going forward." "Good." Victoria's approval was efficient rather than effusive. The board presentation was well executed. Continue building on that foundation. With that assessment, she departed for her next meeting, leaving Miguel to process the morning's developments. His position within Sterling Dynamics was evolving rapidly, from emergency translator to technical consultant to implementation specialist, with board-level visibility. Each step carried both opportunity and risk, with political landmines surrounding every decision. As Miguel returned to his office, his phone buzzed with a text from Sophia's school. His heart immediately raced with parental concern until he read the message, "Science project received highest marks. Teacher says solar system model shows exceptional attention to detail." The simple notification provided perspective amid the corporate complexities. Regardless of executive politics or implementation challenges, certain priorities remain constant, Sophia's well-being and development chief among them. Miguel sent a quick congratulatory text to his daughter promising a special celebration that evening. His computer pinged with meeting requests. The Chen implementation team, the European manufacturing specialists, and Victoria's weekly project review. Each represented expanding responsibilities and expectations, a rapid acceleration of his professional trajectory. Frank's warning echoed in his mind. Men like Blackwood don't appreciate being shown up by someone they consider beneath them. He'll look for ways to make you fail. Miguel considered Richard's careful hostility, Victoria's strategic mentorship, and Winter's unexpected interest. Complex forces pushing and pulling around his unexpected promotion. Yet amid these corporate currents, Miguel recognized that his true advantage lay in exactly what had initially marked him as different. His practical knowledge of how things actually worked rather than how they appeared on spreadsheets and presentations. As he prepared for his next meeting, Miguel's mind returned to the aircraft carriers where he'd learned his most valuable lessons. The massive ships operated effectively only when communication flowed between decks, when those making strategic decisions understood the practical realities of implementation, and those handling implementation understood the strategic objectives driving orders. His new position at Sterling created exactly that bridge, connecting worlds that had operated in dangerous isolation. The path forward would require navigating treacherous political waters while maintaining the integrity that had defined his military service and his approach to fatherhood. Miguel opened the Frankfurt manufacturing specifications, beginning his assessment with the same methodical attention he had applied to aircraft systems and factory equipment. One challenge at a time, one solution at a time, building credibility through results rather than rhetoric. Outside his office window, Dallas continued its relentless pace, indifferent to individual struggles and achievements. Inside Sterling Dynamics, the machinery of corporate ambition hummed with similar indifference. Miguel Santos, former Navy technician, maintenance worker, single father, and now executive specialist, represented an anomaly in both worlds, yet potentially valuable to each precisely because he understood both languages. His computer chimed with an urgent message from Victoria. Mueller's situation deteriorating. Frankfurt representatives arriving tomorrow. Prepare for emergency meeting. This is your opportunity to demonstrate value beyond Chen contract. The challenge was clear. Prove that his unique perspective offered consistent advantages rather than one-time solutions. Miguel saved the document he was reviewing and began preparing for this unexpected test, his mind already analyzing potential approaches to the Frankfurt situation. On his desk beside the corporate laptop and executive credentials sat the small photograph of Sophia he'd brought from his maintenance locker. A reminder of why every challenge mattered beyond professional advancement. For her future, for the opportunities she deserved, Miguel would navigate whatever corporate minefields appeared before him. The question remained whether Sterling Dynamics, with its entrenched hierarchies and political rivalries, would ultimately value the bridge he offered between worlds, or reject the messenger who revealed uncomfortable disconnections between executive vision and operational reality. Word count 7495. The emergency room's harsh fluorescent lights cast stark shadows across Sophia's small face. Miguel paced beside the hospital bed, his calloused hands clenching and unclenching as the minutes crawled past. He'd been in the middle of a meeting with Victoria when the school called. Sophia had collapsed during recess. Victoria hadn't hesitated, immediately ordering her driver to take them both to Children's Medical Center. Now, watching his daughter's chest rise and fall beneath a thin hospital blanket, Miguel felt more helpless than he ever had aboard aircraft carriers in storm-tossed seas. Machines he could fix. Engines had diagnosable problems with clear solutions. But this, his daughter pale and still connected to monitors that beeped with mechanical indifference, this was beyond his ability to repair. Victoria stood by the window, her usual composed demeanor showing unexpected cracks. She'd canceled board meetings, rescheduled international calls, and hadn't left Miguel's side since they'd arrived 3 hours earlier. Her presence provided silent support that Miguel hadn't expected, but desperately needed. Mr. Santos. The doctor entered, young, efficient, with the practiced detachment of someone who delivered both good and terrible news daily. I'm Dr. Emily Chen. We've completed Sophia's initial assessment. Miguel straightened, military bearing, returning automatically in the face of authority. How is she? Sophia experienced what we call a febrile seizure, likely triggered by her rapidly rising temperature from an underlying ear infection. We've started antibiotics and anti-inflammatory medication. Dr. Chen's explanation continued with increasing medical complexity. Terms like tympanic membrane inflammation, post-ictal state, and neurological baselines flowing past Miguel's comprehension. Victoria must have noticed his growing confusion. She stepped forward, touching his arm lightly. Perhaps you could explain Sophia's condition in more accessible terms, Doctor. Dr. Chen paused, recalibrating her approach. Miguel shook his head, frustration breaking through his usual restraint. Explain it to me like you would explain a broken transmission. I need to understand how to fix my daughter. The doctor's expression softened. Of course. Think of Sophia's ear infection like a blocked fuel line. It caused pressure to build up in her system. Her fever is like an engine overheating which triggered the seizure, similar to when a safety valve releases pressure. The seizure itself didn't cause damage, just like a pressure release valve protects the engine. The antibiotics are clearing the blockage, and the anti-inflammatories are cooling the system down. She'll need rest and continued medication, but she should recover completely. Miguel nodded, the mechanical analogy providing clarity amid medical jargon. When can I take her home? We'd like to keep her overnight for observation, but if all remains stable tomorrow morning. Dr. Chen made notes in her chart. She's sleeping now from the medication, but should wake soon. You can stay with her, of course. After the doctor left, Victoria stepped closer to the bed, her expression revealing unexpected vulnerability. She looks so small. Miguel nodded, throat tight with emotion. Thank you for being here. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Victoria's simple statement carried weight beyond professional obligation. Some things matter more than business. Before Miguel could respond, his phone vibrated. Frank's name flashed on the screen. Miguel, where are you? Blackwood's been in your office. Took files from your desk. Something about the Mueller specifications. Miguel tensed immediately, understanding the implications. Richard was using his absence to gather information, possibly to undermine his position while he attended to Sophia. Victoria noticed his expression change. What is it? Richard's been in my office taking files. Miguel kept his voice low, glancing at Sophia's still form. The Mueller specifications. Victoria's expression hardened, the brief vulnerability replaced by strategic calculation. I'll handle Richard. You stay with Sophia. Victoria, this isn't negotiable, Santos. Her tone softened slightly. Your daughter needs you more than Sterling Dynamics does right now. I'll deal with Richard. As Victoria gathered her things to leave, Sophia stirred, her small eyes fluttering open. Papa, where am I? Miguel moved immediately to her side, taking her small hand in his. Hospital, mija. You got sick at school, but you're going to be fine. Sophia blinked, noticing Victoria for the first time. Miss Victoria, you came to the hospital too. Victoria approached the bed, her professional mask slipping to reveal genuine concern. Of course I did, Sophia. Your papa and I were in a meeting when the school called. Was it an important meeting? Sophia asked, her child's perception cutting straight to adult concerns. Victoria smiled, not her practiced corporate expression, but something softer, more genuine. Not as important as making sure you're okay. As Victoria departed, promising to return later, Miguel felt the strange merging of his professional and personal worlds, boundaries dissolving under the fluorescent hospital lights as Sophia's small hand held his with complete trust. Frank's warning proved prophetic. While Miguel remained at the hospital with Sophia, Richard Blackwood moved quickly to consolidate power within Sterling Dynamics. Board members received urgent messages about concerning developments in international contracts. The Mueller specifications, when presented without context, suggested implementation challenges that threatened quarterly projections. Victoria returned to the hospital that evening, her expression revealing both anger and strategic concern. Blackstone Industries has made a hostile takeover offer, 30% premium above current share value. Miguel shifted in the uncomfortable hospital chair, lowering his voice to avoid waking Sophia. Blackstone, the conglomerate that's been acquiring manufacturing companies across Texas. Victoria nodded, her exhaustion briefly visible beneath her professional composure. Richard's been feeding them information. The board received their formal offer an hour ago, along with detailed assessment of our operational vulnerabilities, information only someone with executive access could provide. The betrayal registered clearly. Richard hadn't merely been questioning Miguel's qualifications. He'd been actively undermining sterling dynamics for personal gain. What's his motivation in money power? Victoria's assessment carried the weight of someone who recognized the currency. Blackstone offered him control of their manufacturing division after acquisition. All our international contracts would fall under his authority without my oversight. Miguel processed this information, pieces falling into place. The Mueller specifications. He wanted to demonstrate implementation problems that would justify the takeover. Victoria nodded. The board meets tomorrow to discuss Blackstone's offer. Several members seemed tempted by the premium, more concerned with immediate return than long-term vision. Her gaze shifted to Sophia, sleeping peacefully after her ordeal. How is she? Better. Doctor says we can go home tomorrow morning. Miguel studied Victoria, noting the unusual personal concern beneath her professional questions. You should focus on the board meeting. We'll be fine. Victoria shook her head. The meeting isn't until afternoon. I'll have my driver take you both home in the morning. She hesitated, something unusual for her decisive nature. Richard doesn't know I'm aware of his betrayal. I confronted him about accessing your office, and he threatened to expose our inappropriate relationship to the board. Miguel tensed. What relationship? We've maintained completely professional. It doesn't matter what's true. Victoria's expression revealed practiced cynicism. The mere suggestion of impropriety between CEO and subordinate creates distraction the board doesn't need during a takeover attempt. The calculated manipulation demonstrated Richard's understanding of corporate politics, creating personal complications to disguise professional betrayal. Miguel recognized the tactic from military operations, diversionary attacks to mask primary objectives. What's your strategy? He asked instinctively, shifting from personal concern to tactical planning. The board respects numbers more than narratives. We need to demonstrate Sterling's value exceeds Blackstone's offer through concrete projections, not just promises. Victoria checked her watch. Get Sophia home safely tomorrow. Then we need to talk about saving the company. As Victoria departed, her usual confident stride carrying her through the hospital corridor, Miguel contemplated the strange intersection of personal crisis and professional catastrophe. Sophia stirred slightly in her sleep, reminding him that regardless of corporate machinations, some priorities remained absolute. The following day brought both relief and escalation. Sophia returned home, her condition improved, but requiring continued rest and medication. Miguel arranged for Mrs. Patel to stay with her while he returned to Sterling Dynamics, where crisis gripped the executive floor. Frank intercepted him in the lobby, his weathered face revealing unusual concern. Blackwood's been meeting with department heads all morning, painting a picture of inevitable transition to Blackstone ownership. Claims the board has practically decided already. Miguel nodded, thanks for the intelligence. Where's Victoria? Her office, war room set up, entire international team assembled. Frank grabbed Miguel's arm before he could head toward the elevator. Listen, son, the factory floor is buzzing with rumors. People are worried about jobs, benefits, security. Blackstone has a reputation for gutting acquisitions, keeping the contracts, but eliminating the workforce. The human implications registered clearly. Beyond executive politics and corporate strategy, 3,000 families depended on Sterling Dynamics for their livelihoods. I'll keep you informed, Frank. Meanwhile, calm the floor if you can. Nothing's decided yet. Victoria's office had transformed into strategic command center. Documents covering every surface, international partners connected via video conference, market analysts providing real-time valuation assessments. She looked up as Miguel entered, relief briefly visible before professional focus returned. Santos, perfect timing. Carlo Rossini is on the line from Milan. The video screen showed a distinguished Italian businessman, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the confident bearing of generational wealth. Ah, Mr. Santos, Victoria has explained your family emergency. I trust your daughter is recovering. The personal concern from international manufacturing magnate was unexpected. Yes, sir. Thank you for asking. She's home resting now. Rossini nodded approval. Family first always. Now to business. Victoria tells me Sterling faces acquisition threat from company with questionable manufacturing commitment. This concerns us given our modernization initiative. The strategic opening was clear. international partners valuing Sterling's technical expertise above Blackstone's financial engineering. Victoria expanded the connection. Carlo has offered Miguel position as technical director for Rossini Industries' modernization program. Significant salary increase, international prominence, immediate relocation to Milan. The unexpected offer landed like tactical explosion amid already complex battlefield. Miguel glanced at Victoria, trying to read her intention behind sharing this information in current crisis context. Rossini continued smoothly. The offer remains open regardless of Sterling's ownership situation. We valued technical expertise independent of corporate structures. As the video call concluded with diplomatic courtesy, Victoria turned to Miguel, her expression revealing nothing about her personal reaction to Rossini's offer. The Milan position provides you security regardless of Blackstone's success. I wanted you aware of all options before we proceed. The unstated question hung between them. Would Miguel protect his personal interests through Rossini's offer, or remain committed to Sterling's uncertain future? His response came without hesitation. A good mechanic doesn't abandon the engine when it starts running rough. That's when it needs you most. The simple statement carried deeper meaning beyond mechanical metaphor. What's our strategy against Blackstone? Victoria's slight smile acknowledged both his decision and its significance. We have 48 hours before the board votes on Blackstone's offer. We need to demonstrate Sterling's value exceeds their premium through concrete international partnerships, not just hypothetical projections. The strategy session continued through evening, Miguel connecting with Chen Corporation and Muller and Associates to secure formal partnership commitments that validated Sterling's technical expertise as irreplaceable competitive advantage. Throughout, Richard operated in parallel channels, meeting with board members individually, emphasizing Blackstone's premium value while questioning Victoria's emotional judgment during crisis. When Miguel finally returned home exhausted from hours of international negotiations, he found Sophia awake despite the late hour. She sat at their small kitchen table, coloring with focused determination. "Mija, you should be resting," Miguel said gently, setting down his briefcase filled with partnership documents. Sophia looked up, her expression serious beyond her years. "Mrs. Patel said your company might be sold to bad people. Is that true, Papa?" The simple question cut through corporate complexity to fundamental truth. Miguel sat beside her, considering how to explain hostile takeovers to a 7-year-old. Some people want to buy the company because they think they can make money by changing how it works. Would you lose your new job, the one where you help people understand each other? Miguel nodded slowly. Probably. The new owners would bring their own people. Sophia frowned, processing this information with childish logic. That's stupid. You're good at helping people understand each other. I told all my friends how you fixed the big China meeting. Despite the crisis, Miguel smiled at her fierce loyalty. Thank you, Mija. Now it's late and you need sleep to get better. As he tucked Sophia into bed, Miguel's phone rang. Crion. Victoria, her voice carrying unusual urgency. Santos, we have a problem. Richard accessed the secure server containing our proprietary manufacturing specifications. Data shows files were copied to external drive at 9:17 p.m. The implications registered immediately. He's giving Blackstone our technical documentation, probably trying to prove they don't need our workforce if they have our specifications. Exactly. Board meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. We need conclusive evidence of his betrayal before then. Victoria's voice carried the focused intensity of combat operations. How would you handle this situation if it were military intelligence breach? The question activated Miguel's naval security training. Procedures for identifying and containing information, compromise aboard aircraft carriers, set trap with traceable but non-critical information, monitor transmission channels, intercept proof of deliberate disclosure. Can you implement such a system by tomorrow morning? Miguel considered the technical requirements against available resources. Yes, but I'll need access to network security protocols and Richard's communication channels. Done. My office, 7 a.m. The following morning began with tactical precision. Using his military cybersecurity training, Miguel created modified technical specifications containing subtle identification markers, manufacturing parameters that appeared valuable, but would be recognizable if transmitted externally. With Victoria's authorization, these documents were placed where Richard would discover them, during his usual morning information gathering. Frank arrived at 8 a.m., bringing unexpected reinforcement. "Brought some friends," he announced, nodding toward four senior maintenance technicians waiting in the hallway. Word spread about Blackstone's plans for the workforce. The floor wants to help. Victoria studied the group with new calculation. "How many can you mobilize if needed?" Frank's weathered face creased with satisfaction. "Three shifts worth, nearly 400 people who understand what's really at stake." The potential leverage registered clearly. Workforce solidarity creating pressure beyond financial calculations. Victoria nodded approval. "Keep them ready. We may need visible demonstration of sterling's true value before the board votes." By mid-morning, the trap yielded results. Network security detected external transmission of the marked specifications to Blackstone's acquisition team. The electronic evidence created irrefutable proof of Richard's corporate espionage, deliberate transfer of proprietary information to hostile entity during active takeover attempt. Victoria reviewed the evidence with calculated precision. This confirms the betrayal but doesn't address the fundamental challenge. The board remains tempted by Blackstone's premium, regardless of Richard's methods. Miguel studied the technical specifications Richard had transmitted, manufacturing details divorced from practical implementation knowledge. These documents are worthless without the workforce that understands how to implement them. Specifications don't build precision components. Skilled technicians do. The observation crystallized their defense strategy. Victoria's expression shifted as the approach became clear. "We need to demonstrate that sterling's value lies in its people, not just its paperwork." She checked her watch. 3 hours until the board convenes. Prepare your presentation accordingly. The executive floor transformed through coordinated effort. International partners connected via secure video manufacturing, floor leadership assembled in conference rooms, evidence of Richard's betrayal organized for maximum impact. When the board arrived for their scheduled meeting, they entered an environment carefully crafted to demonstrate sterling's integrated value beyond financial metrics. Harold Winters, senior board member, raised eyebrows at the unexpected assembly. "Victoria, this appears more like military mobilization than financial discussion." "The circumstances warrant comprehensive response," Victoria replied smoothly. Blackstone's offer affects not just shareholders but customers, partners, and workforce whose combined value exceeds simple premium calculations. Richard arrived last, his confident stride faltering slightly upon seeing the assembled groups. His recovery was immediate but telling. Professional smile fixed in place as he took his customary seat beside Victoria. "I see we've expanded attendance for what should be straightforward financial discussion," he observed, careful neutrality masking obvious concern. Victoria opened the meeting with practiced authority, presenting Blackstone's offer in factual terms before addressing its implications. The 30% premium appears attractive in isolation. However, today's presentation will demonstrate sterling's intrinsic value substantially exceeds this temporary financial incentive. Richard interjected smoothly. "With respect, Victoria, emotional attachment to the company you built shouldn't cloud objective financial assessment. Blackstone's premium record represents immediate shareholder value without operational uncertainty." The calculated framing, positioning Victoria's resistance as emotional rather than strategic, drew knowing glances from several board members. Harold Winters, however, seemed less convinced. "I'd like to hear the complete assessment before drawing conclusions." Winters directed, nodding toward Victoria to continue. Victoria introduced Miguel without preamble. "Our technical communications specialist has prepared analysis of sterling's manufacturing value integration that directly impacts acquisition considerations." Miguel approached the presentation with the same focused precision he'd once applied to critical aircraft repairs. He wore work clothes rather than business attire, deliberate choice that connected executive presentation with factory floor reality. Sterling Dynamics value derives from three integrated elements that cannot be separated without destroying the whole. Miguel began displaying simplified technical schematic, engineering specifications, manufacturing processes, and most importantly, workforce implementation expertise. For the next 20 minutes, Miguel demonstrated how sterling's competitive advantage emerged from integration of these elements. Technical documentation meaningless without skilled workforce, manufacturing processes worthless without implementation expertise. Throughout, he connected abstract financial projections to concrete production realities, translating factory floor knowledge into executive-level implementations. Richard's interruptions grew increasingly frustrated as the presentation undermined Blackstone's fundamental acquisition premise. These operational details, while interesting, don't change the financial mathematics. Blackstone's premium remains regardless of implementation considerations. Actually, they do, Miguel countered, displaying communication intercepts that prove Richard's transmission of proprietary information. Blackstone's offer assumes they can acquire our specifications without our workforce. These unauthorized disclosures demonstrate deliberate attempt to devalue Sterling's human capital while extracting technical documentation. The evidence created visible shock among board members. Richard's expression shifted from confident control to defensive calculation as his betrayal became undeniably clear. "This is absurd," he objected, professional demeanor cracking under exposure. "Preliminary information sharing during acquisition discussions is standard practice." Harold Winters leaned forward, studying the evidence with practiced scrutiny. "Transmitting proprietary manufacturing specifications during hostile takeover attempt is corporate espionage, Richard, not standard practice." As Richard attempted further justification, Miguel activated the final element of their defense strategy. The conference room door opened to reveal Frank Wilson leading delegation of manufacturing floor workers, skilled technicians whose combined experience represented centuries of practical knowledge. "Board members should understand exactly what Blackstone intends to eliminate after acquisition," Miguel explained, gesturing toward the assembled workforce representatives. "These individuals embody Sterling's competitive advantage, practical knowledge that it transforms theoretical specifications into precision manufacturing reality." Frank stepped forward, his weathered appearance contrasting sharply with the executive environment. "I've maintained manufacturing equipment for 43 years. The machines don't run themselves and the specifications don't interpret themselves. Blackstone wants the contracts without the people who fulfill them." The human reality of acquisition mathematics shifted the board's perspective visibly. Miguel seized this moment for his closing argument, passion breaking through his usual measured delivery. "Value isn't created in boardrooms, it's forged on factory floors by people who know how to build things that stand the test of time. Sterling's worth isn't captured in quarterly reports or premium calculations. It's built daily by 3,000 employees whose expertise cannot be downloaded or duplicated." The presentation concluded with international partners via video connection, Chen Muller and Rossini himself, confirming their partnerships depended on Sterling's integrated workforce expertise, not merely contractual relationships. Their collective testimony created powerful counterweight to Blackstone's financial premium. As the final presentation concluded, Harold Winters addressed Victoria directly. "This represents compelling alternative perspective to pure financial calculation. The board will require private deliberation before voting." Richard attempted one final intervention. "Before deliberations begin, I feel obligated to mention concerns about Victoria's objectivity during this process. Her personal relationship with Mr. Santos may be influencing her resistance to objectively beneficial acquisition. The desperate tactic, attempting to discredit the messenger when the message proved undeniable, revealed Richard's recognition of his failing position. Victoria responded with characteristic directness. "My professional assessment of Sterling's value remains entirely objective, as verified by independent international partners and quantifiable performance metrics. The board should evaluate evidence rather than innuendo." Harold Winters nodded agreement. "Noted, Richard. Now, if everyone except board members would give us the room for deliberation." The 3 hours of board deliberation created excruciating uncertainty throughout Sterling Dynamics. Manufacturing floor operations continued with nervous energy, executive offices maintained careful productivity, and international partners awaited outcome with strategic concern. Miguel spent this time with Frank and his maintenance team, their practical conversation about equipment repairs, providing grounding amid corporate turbulence. Victoria found them in the maintenance shop, her arrival creating immediate attention. Her expression revealed nothing about the board's decision as she approached Miguel directly. "The board vote was 8-3 against Blackstone's offer," she announced without preamble. Harold Winters convinced majority that integrated workforce expertise represents value exceeding temporary premium. The simple statement released tension that had built throughout sterling dynamics for days. Frank's weathered face broke into a rare smile as maintenance team exchanged relieved glances. Miguel nodded acknowledgement, professional satisfaction, masking deeper emotions. And Richard, he asked, recognizing the incomplete resolution. Terminated effective immediately. Corporate espionage violates both employment contract and federal law. Security is escorting him from the building as we speak. Victoria's expression remained professionally neutral despite the significant victory. The board has authorized restructuring of our international division to better integrate technical expertise with executive planning. The statement carried implications beyond immediate crisis resolution, organizational change reflecting lessons from both the Mueller implementation and Blackstone defense. Miguel recognized potential opportunity within this restructuring, but focused on immediate priorities. What happens next? Executive committee meeting tomorrow morning to implement board directives. Victoria glanced toward Frank and his team, including new technical training program to develop next generation of implementation specialists. The announcement registered with Frank, whose typical cynicism yielded to genuine appreciation. About time, executive floor recognized where real value gets created. Victoria's slight smile acknowledged both the criticism and its validity. Recent events have clarified certain organizational priorities. She turned back to Miguel. My office 8 a.m. tomorrow. We have restructuring to plan. As Victoria departed with characteristic efficiency, Frank clapped Miguel's shoulder with gruff approval. Not bad for a maintenance technician who was invisible 3 months ago. The observation captured Miguel's extraordinary journey from factory floor to executive influence. Transition built on practical knowledge rather than traditional credentials. Yet amid professional transformation, personal priorities remained unchanged. I need to check on Sophia, Miguel explained, gathering his things as maintenance team disbanded. Yesterday's excitement was a lot for 7-year-old to process. Frank nodded understanding. Family first always. The company will still be here tomorrow. Miguel found Sophia and Mrs. Patel in their apartment, the kitchen table covered with colorful construction paper and glitter. Sophia looked up with bright eyes, her recovery evident in returned energy. Papa, did you save your company from the bad people? The simplified question made Miguel smile despite his exhaustion. It wasn't exactly bad people, mija, just different ideas about what makes the company valuable. Mrs. Patel gathered her things with knowing smile. Sophia has been very concerned about your important meeting. She made something special to help. Sophia proudly displayed construction paper creation, childish drawing of Miguel in work clothes surrounded by people at machines. Across the top in careful letters, my papa helps people understand each other. The simple representation of his role, filtered through 7-year-old perception, provided perspective amid corporate complexity. Miguel hugged Sophia tightly, gratitude for her unconditional support, overwhelming professional satisfaction. Did my picture help? Sophia asked seriously. More than you know, mija, more than you know. The following weeks brought significant transformation to Sterling Dynamics. Victoria implemented comprehensive restructuring that integrated technical expertise into executive decision-making, creating formal pathways for practical knowledge to influence strategic planning. The Technical Communication Division expanded beyond Miguel's original role to include specialists from each manufacturing discipline, maintenance technicians whose hands-on experience now informed corporate strategy directly. Frank Wilson, despite initial reluctance, accepted leadership position in new technical training program bearing his name. The Wilson Initiative, designed to develop next generation of implementation specialists through apprenticeship rather than academic credentials alone. His practical wisdom, previously confined to maintenance shop conversations, now shaped organizational development directly. Miguel's position evolved accordingly, formal promotion to Director of International Technical Integration, reporting directly to Victoria while maintaining connection to manufacturing floor operations. The role formalized his bridge function between worlds, connecting executive strategy with implementation reality across international partnerships. On quiet Friday evening, 3 months after the Blackstone crisis, Victoria requested Miguel's presence in her office after normal business hours. He arrived to find her reviewing quarterly performance metrics, her focused concentration familiar, despite their changed relationship. Santos, close the door, please. Victoria set aside her documents, giving him full attention. The Chen implementation proceeds ahead of schedule. Muzeller's verification confirms a quality standards exceeding contractual requirements. Rossini's modernization initiative launches next month with your modified engagement structure. The business assessment reflected objective success beyond crisis management, sustainable value creation through integrated technical approach. Miguel acknowledged the results with professional satisfaction. The restructuring is working. Technical expertise informing executive decisions creates implementation efficiency that translates directly to performance metrics. Victoria nodded, rare approval visible in her expression. The board has noticed. Harold Winters specifically commended the Wilson Initiative as long overdue recognition of practical knowledge value. She paused, her usual directness momentarily hesitant. There's another matter I wanted to discuss, more personal than professional. The shift in conversation registered clearly. Miguel waited, recognizing unusual territory for their typically business-focused interactions. Sophia's science fair is next Thursday. Victoria continued, surprising him with her awareness of his daughter's schedule. I thought perhaps, that is, if appropriate, I might attend with you. The invitation carried significance beyond simple school event attendance. Miguel considered his response carefully. She'd like that. She talks about you often, how you helped when she was sick, how you understand important things like her papa does. Victoria's expression softened, vulnerability rarely visible beneath her professional composure. I've never attended children's school functions. Is there protocol I should understand? The question, practical concern masking deeper uncertainty, revealed unexpected dimension to Victoria's typically confident persona. Miguel smiled slightly. Just be yourself. Sophia appreciates honesty more than performance. She has remarkable ability to see through pretense. Victoria nodded, accepting this guidance with characteristic seriousness. Thursday, then, I'll adjust my schedule accordingly. The simple arrangement, school science fair attendance, represented significant evolution in their relationship boundaries between professional and personal, continuing to blur through shared experiences and mutual respect. The science fair proved unexpectedly meaningful for all involved. Sophia beamed with pride as both Miguel and Victoria examined her project. Detailed model of internal combustion engine constructed from household materials, complete with moving pistons and crankshaft. Her explanation demonstrated both technical understanding beyond her years and natural ability to translate complex concepts into accessible explanations. She has your gift for practical knowledge and communication, Victoria observed quietly as Sophia demonstrated her project to classmates. Remarkable capability at her age. Miguel nodded, paternal pride evident despite his usual reserve. She absorbs everything, watches me work on the Mustang, asks endless questions about how things function. Understanding mechanical relationships comes naturally to her. Victoria studied Sophia with thoughtful assessment. Sterling should establish scholarship program for students with natural technical aptitude. Traditional academic paths overlook practical intelligence like hers. The suggestion, corporate resources directed toward developing talents like Sophia's, demonstrated Victoria's evolving perspective beyond quarterly metrics and shareholder value. Miguel recognized significant shift in her priorities since the Blackstone crisis. That's generous idea. Many children with mechanical intelligence never receive appropriate development opportunities. Victoria shook her head slightly. Not generosity, strategic investment. Future technical innovation requires cultivating natural aptitude regardless of traditional academic performance. The response might have seemed calculating months earlier. Now Miguel recognized Victoria's characteristic directness. Expressing genuine values through practical frameworks, she understood. Their growing relationship had transformed both individuals, Miguel becoming more strategic in his thinking, Victoria more connected to practical implementation and human considerations. Following the science fair, their personal relationship developed naturally alongside their professional collaboration. Weekend outings with Sophia, dinner conversations extending beyond business considerations, gradual integration of their separate worlds into shared experience, built on mutual respect and complementary perspectives. 6 months after the Blackstone crisis, with Sterling Dynamics thriving under restructured integration of technical expertise In executive strategy, Miguel made decisions that bridged his personal and professional transformations. During weekend restoration session on the Mustang, now nearly completed after years of patient rebuilding, he asked Sophia a simple but significant question. Mija, how would you feel if I asked Victoria to become part of our family? Sophia looked up from polishing chrome bumper, her expression serious beyond her years. You mean get married like Joey Martinez's dad did with his new mom? Miguel nodded, watching her reaction carefully. Something like that, but only if you are comfortable with the idea. Sophia considered this with characteristic thoughtfulness. Victoria makes you happy, and she listens to me like my ideas matter. She doesn't talk to me like I'm just a kid. She returned to polishing with renewed determination. I think she'd be a good addition to our team. The simple assessment, practical consideration of compatibility and contribution, reflected Miguel's own values through his daughter's perception. He smiled, recognizing Sophia's wisdom beneath childish expression. That's exactly right, Mija. She would make our team stronger. The proposal itself reflected Miguel's practical nature. Not elaborate restaurant production or theatrical gesture, but honest conversation during quiet evening at Victoria's penthouse overlooking Dallas skyline. He presented vintage mechanical watch he'd restored himself, intricate gears and movements rebuilt with patient precision, each component carefully calibrated to function in perfect harmony. The individual parts have value, Miguel explained, as Victoria examined the timepiece with characteristic attention to detail. But their true worth emerges through proper integration, each component contributing its specific function to create something greater than the individual pieces. Victoria understood the metaphor immediately, her expression revealing emotions typically hidden beneath professional composure. Integration of complementary capabilities, creating sustainable value beyond isolated components. Miguel smiled at her characteristic translation of emotional concept into practical framework. Exactly. We're better together than apart. Your strategic vision with my practical implementation creating balance, neither could achieve alone. Victoria's response carried both vulnerability and certainty, rare combination for someone accustomed to calculated decisions. I've approached relationships like business acquisitions, evaluating potential return against required investment with careful risk assessment. Miguel waited, recognizing her need to process significant decisions through familiar frameworks. But this, Victoria continued, holding the restored watch with unusual gentleness. This represents different calculation altogether. Partnership based on complementary strengths rather than negotiated compromise. Integration rather than acquisition. Her answer came with characteristic directness, emotion expressed through practical certainty rather than romantic flourish. Yes, our combined capabilities create sustainable competitive advantage neither could achieve independently. The unconventional acceptance, love expressed through strategic assessment rather than poetic declaration, perfectly captured their unique connection. Miguel smiled, recognizing that Victoria's practical expression carried deeper emotional certainty than any traditional sentiment. Their wedding 6 months later embodied the integrated worlds they had built together. Ceremony held in Sterling Dynamics manufacturing facility rather than conventional venue guests, including both executive leadership and factory floor workers. Frank Wilson serving as Miguel's best man, while Harold Winters escorted Victoria with grandfatherly pride. Sophia participated as enthusiastic flower girl, her handmade signs directing guests with practical instructions, ceremony this way, and food after talking part. Her obvious comfort with both executive attendees and maintenance technicians demonstrated the successful integration of previously separate worlds. The ceremony itself reflected their complementary natures, Victoria's organizational precision ensuring flawless logistics, while Miguel's practical focus maintained connection to fundamental purpose beyond ceremonial details. Their vows combined strategic commitment with mechanical metaphor, promises of maintenance and calibration alongside growth and innovation. Like properly engineered systems, Miguel promised, we'll adapt to changing conditions while maintaining core structural integrity. And like strategic partnerships, Victoria responded, we'll leverage complementary capabilities to create value neither could achieve independently. The reception brought together worlds previously separated by organizational hierarchy, Chen Corporation representatives conversing with maintenance technicians, Muller's engineering team exchanging implementation insights with assembly line operators, board members discussing practical manufacturing challenges with shift supervisors. The integration Miguel had championed professionally now manifested personally, breaking down artificial barriers between complementary knowledge domains. As celebration continued into evening, Miguel and Victoria found quiet moment together watching their diverse guests from slight distance. Sophia danced with Frank Wilson, the gruff maintenance supervisor, showing surprising grace as he twirled Miguel's daughter carefully across the floor. "We've created something significant," Victoria observed, characteristic precision expressing deeper emotional satisfaction. Not just personal partnership, but organizational transformation. Sterling Dynamics functions fundamentally differently than 6 months ago. Miguel nodded, understanding her need to process personal satisfaction through professional frameworks. Integration always creates value beyond component capabilities. True in mechanical systems, organizational structures, and family relationships. Victoria's hand found his rare public display of affection reflecting her evolving comfort with emotional expression. "Sophia asked if she could call me mom yesterday. I told her that decision belonged entirely to her, without obligation or expectation." The simple statement carried profound significance. Victoria prioritizing Sophia's emotional needs above formal roles or traditional expectations. Miguel squeezed her hand, gently acknowledging the importance of her approach. What did she decide? That she already has mother even if absent, but she needs someone to teach her about being strong woman in complicated world. Victoria's voice carried unusual emotion beneath her typical composure. She proposed Victoria for public settings and Mom V for family conversations. Practical solution to complex emotional situation. Miguel smiled, recognizing Sophia's characteristic approach, finding mechanical solution to emotional challenge just as he would have done. "She's definitely my daughter." "Our daughter," Victoria corrected gently. "Different contributions, integrated purpose." The following weekend in their new home's expanded garage, Miguel guided Sophia through final adjustments on the fully restored Mustang, the project that had paralleled their journey from maintenance technician and single father to integrated family with expanded horizons. Victoria joined them at her designer clothing replaced by practical work clothes, learning mechanical basics alongside Sophia with characteristic focused attention. The family tableau, father teaching technical skills, daughter applying natural mechanical intelligence, mother supporting both with strategic encouragement, represented perfect integration of their complementary strengths. As Miguel connected battery cables for first engine start, Sophia watched with anticipation, while Victoria documented procedure with careful attention to sequence and safety protocols. The engine roared to life, powerful mechanical system functioning properly after years of patient restoration, each component contributing its specific purpose to create integrated whole, greater than individual parts. "We fixed it, Papa," Sophia exclaimed, her expression reflecting pure joy of mechanical success. "Together," Miguel corrected gently, including Victoria with his glance. "Different skills, shared purpose." Victoria nodded, understanding, her hand finding Miguel's with natural familiarity. Integrated capabilities creating sustainable value in engines, organizations, and families. The simple statement, expressing emotional connection through practical framework, perfectly captured their unique partnership. Different worlds connected through mutual respect and complementary strengths, building something neither could have created alone. Reliable engine powerful enough to carry them all forward together.